FPS Win. Written by
嘟嘟雪球
Chapter 182. Chen Chen's plan was very clear, but when he actually implemented it, he discovered a huge problem. That is, these days, there are no lithium battery electric vehicles in the old street at all. When they walked into an electric car store on the commercial street and asked to buy some spare lithium batteries for electric cars, the store owner looked at them like they were monsters and said, "You want lithium batteries? Go to Shanghai to buy them. Why are you here?" Chen Chen was stunned for a moment, then asked, "No lithium batteries? Not even a single one? Where can I find lithium batteries for you? They are available in mobile phone stores. Go buy them yourself." It was not until this time that Chen Chen finally realized that lithium batteries were not yet popular at this time in 2010. This gave him a strong sense of unreality. He still remembered that before he traveled through time in his previous life, most of the electric cars on the streets had been equipped with lithium batteries. Even some high-end electric car brands began to announce that they would launch a move towards more advanced sulfur batteries. It's only been a dozen years. Is the speed of technological advancements so fast? The three of them walked out of the store helplessly. Kai asked, "Captain, what should we do now? Should we go to the mobile phone store and buy some small batteries?" "Forget it. How many batteries would it take to cause a large-scale explosion? And if we buy batteries on a large scale, let alone batteries, even if we buy mobile phones, it will attract unnecessary attention. What if the boss reports it to the police? Never mind. If lithium batteries can't be used, there are other high-energy fuels. You know me. I can't just make one plan." Hearing this, Kai nodded in agreement. When he was fighting Wan Hinai, he was able to come up with 6 plans. Now that it's such a big thing, how could he not have any alternatives? So, he looked at Chen Chen expectantly, waiting for his answer. After thinking for a moment, Chen Chen said, "I can think of a lot of high-energy fuels, but if we have to take volume, temperature, and combustion rate into consideration, there aren't too many options. Plus, we have to consider the difficulty of preparation and obtaining materials." Chen Chen paused and frowned. There are no chemical supply stores in Old Street, which is a big problem. Of course, if there is one, there is no need to consider any traditional methods because Big Ivan can do it. However, some chemical preparations are not available only in chemical supply stores. He carefully calculated all the equipment he would need, and then continued, "White Dog, go do a few things. First, go to the auto repair shop and get some aluminum foil. I remember that places like this should have finished aluminum foil for sale. If not, go to the food packaging factory and see if they have it. Be careful. Don't use tin aluminum alloy. Use pure aluminum foil. Second, go find me a can of Q gas. It's sold everywhere. Check at a jewelry store. If not, go to a supermarket. If you can't find it, go find me an electric grinder. Third, go buy me some beakers, alcohol lamps, rubber tubes, balances, pressure cookers, and a barrel of gasoline. I'll make a list for you later." "Clear." Go nodded immediately. And then Chen Chen said to Kai, "You should also prepare some things. First, go to the hospital and get some PP powder. The amount should be large, at least 5 kilograms. If it's not enough, go to a few more stores. This stuff is not a controlled item, so no one should ask too much. Second, the agricultural supply store should have anhydrous LS copper. Go get a bag. Third, I just passed by a few meat stores. Their pig and sheep heads were shaved very cleanly. Ask them if they have SJ. If they do, get it back. If the food store doesn't have it, there are a few printing and dyeing textile factories near the old street. Go steal some. Fourth, look for heat pads in the supermarket. The kind that makes itself warm when you stick it on. Go buy some and sell more." "Clear." Kai also answered immediately. Everything was arranged, and everyone immediately separated and acted individually. Chen Chen went to buy a few mobile phones, some wires, and some circuit boards by himself, and then ran to the Wind Palace Hotel and booked a suite to stay in. Their characters are not ordinary people, but guests who come from the north specifically to gamble. Therefore, staying in a luxury hotel is in line with their status. During the process, no one asked any unnecessary questions. This is the rule in Laojia. After checking in, Chen Chen quickly checked all the configurations in the room. After making sure there were no cameras, he began to arrange the environment with confidence. Just when he was extremely busy, Kai suddenly called him. As soon as he opened his mouth, he brought some unexpected good news to Chen Chen. "Captain, I found something good." "What good stuff?" Chen Chen asked doubtfully. "Aluminum powder. You want aluminum foil and Q gas. Isn't it just to make aluminum powder?" "How did you know that?" "I read books, high school textbooks, chemistry experiments." Okay. Chen Chen exhaled and continued to ask, "What's the particle size?" "I don't know. They themselves don't know either. But it must be detailed enough, right? If there really is aluminum powder, it can be said to be very fine. Because the aluminum powder used in fireworks is generally 80 to 200 mesh, which is below 500 microns. However, this thing is a strictly controlled item. It's okay to just ask, but it's easy to get into trouble if you actually buy it. Forget it. Don't buy it yet. Let's try the Q gas replacement method first. It's not that troublesome. Understood. Then I'll leave a clue here first. If it doesn't work, we'll come over and steal it and run away." "All right. How about SJ?" Chen Chen asked. "SJ is plenty. We got it. Powdered Q sodium oxide. 99% purity. Where did you get it?" "Agricultural supply store, together with anhydrous LS copper." "Awesome. The agricultural supply store on Old Street even sells this?" "There are a lot of them. I guess they are all bought by restaurants and food factories. I found the hot packs, and I will buy some back later." "Okay. I'll talk to you when I get back." Chen Chen hung up the phone and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Kai is becoming more and more reliable. He is quick and efficient. Most importantly, he understands things quickly and can comprehend what I mean. On the other hand, the White Dog is not quite as good. I asked him to buy some materials for making aluminum powder, but there has been no response so far. Chen Chen shook his head and continued with the work in his hands. After simply packing up, he did not stay in the room, but went down to the casino on the first floor, exchanged chips for 10,000 US dollars, and started playing blackjack. The way of playing blackjack here is a little different from that in other regular casinos because it actually comes with 5 little dragons. It can be said that the casinos here have taken magnifying gambling nature to the extreme. It is for this reason that this place can replace Macau and become the first choice for addicted gamblers. Chen Chen's luck was very average. Of course, he didn't play seriously at all. He was just secretly observing those down-and-out gamblers who were wandering in the hall, waiting to pick up chips and waiting to exchange a few nice words for lucky money, trying to find a few suitable candidates among them. The person he wants must be crazy enough, but still have some rationality. He must have reached great heights before, but now is completely powerless to recover. It won't work if you're the kind of person who gives up on yourself. You have to be the kind of person who wants to seize every opportunity to make a comeback. In more than 2 hours, he actually saw several suitable ones. However, now is not the time to actively contact them. Once the equipment is ready, consider the follow-up matters. If it really doesn't work, you can actually go to the room and put the fuel there yourself. It's relatively risky, but it won't be difficult if you take advantage of the chaos to escape. Wasn't it Peng Diren's own people who set Liu Abayo's casino on fire? The arsonist hadn't been caught when he traveled through time. Chen Chen had something on his mind, but he still pretended to be worried about gains and losses while playing cards. His behavior was no different from any other gambler here. After he finally lost the last chip, he got up with relief and returned to the room. At this time, Bai Go and Shi Dakai had already arrived. All the equipment and reagents were complete. According to Chen Chen's instructions, they did not bring them all back at once, but transported them in backpacks several times without attracting the attention of the security personnel. Captain, what exactly are we going to build? The white dog asked impatiently. You asked me to read a book, but you didn't. You were dumbfounded at the critical moment, right? Chen Chen said something to him in a bad mood, and then replied, Thermite bomb. Thermite bullet? The white dog was stunned. Can you make this thing yourself? What's so strange about that? It's just a home version. The process is very simple, and it's a common chemistry experiment. Chen Chen rolled his eyes and explained. That's because there's nothing in this shabby place called Laojia. If it were in China, in other big cities, you could buy welding powder directly, and that stuff would be enough. Is it so awesome? The white dog sighed, and then continued to ask. To make thermite, what is Q gas used for? Making aluminum powder. What about SJ? To make copper oxide. Where's PP? Oxidizer, combustion aid. Where's the warm baby? Iron oxide. Oh, that's not right. We already have iron oxide, so why do we need to oxidize copper? The iron oxide particles are too large, and the reaction contact surface is insufficient. We have to rely on copper oxide to increase it. Forget it, don't ask anymore. Just do as I say. In fact, ordinary thermite only needs aluminum foil and PP powder. The reason why Chen Chen prepared so much is to maximize the effect under limited conditions. He was too lazy to explain more, and Bai Go immediately shut up. So then, under the command of Chen Chen, several people spent a full 3 hours in the living room of the Wynn Hotel suite to produce the first batch of thermite materials. The process is really simple. So simple that even Bai Go was a little confused. The only thing that is a bit difficult is the manufacturing of aluminum powder. However, it is really within the scope of family operation. Looking at the 2 piles of powder in front of him, Bai Go subconsciously asked, Is that all? How do I light it? I forgot to buy gunpowder, but you can just burn it directly. I bought 2 fireworks. Shidakai interrupted. Here you go, Chen Chen said approvingly. Then, right there in the hotel bathroom, they witnessed a spectacular thermite combustion. The effect is okay, but the particles are still too big. Chen Chen said with a little disappointment. But, for setting fires, it's definitely enough. You don't need too much. Putting it in 2 places will be enough. What about the pressure cooker? I bought 4. Just 2 will do. Come on now, fill these 2 pots. You don't need too much aluminum powder, 1/3 is enough. And fill the rest with aluminum foil. Clear. It took Chen Chen a whole day to prepare everything they needed. On the other hand, according to Peng Diren's feedback, his negotiations with the Myanmar side are still ongoing. Wei Chaoren seems to have made some unusual moves, but has not yet directly launched a retaliation. This means that the Dongfeng Corps has plenty of time. When the lids of the 2 pressure cookers were closed, the circuits were connected, and they were packed into the suitcase. Chen Chen finally breathed a sigh of relief. He went downstairs with Bai Go and found 2 gamblers he had taken a fancy to before and brought them into the suite. The gambler who received the reward obeyed his orders, and he didn't waste any more words. He pointed at the suitcase and said directly, There are 2 jammers in here. They can interfere with the programs of the slot machines in the casino. We're going to use it at Henry's tonight and make a killing. We need 2 assistants to go to their hotel room and place the jammers. You don't have to do anything, just go downstairs after placing them in the room. As for the reward, it's 10,000 US dollars per person. At the same time, we allow you to fish with us. You can use this $10,000 as gambling capital to play slot machines. 6 hours, and then we're leaving. How much you can get depends on your ability. As soon as he said this, the expressions on the 2 gamblers' faces changed immediately. Perhaps during the days when they were exploited by the casino, they had imagined countless times to take revenge on the casino in various ways. Now, the opportunity is in front of them. Not only can they take revenge, but they can also make money. Why not do such a business? Without any hesitation, the 2 of them immediately said, I'll do it. I'll do it too. Chen Chen nodded and said to Shidakai, Number 3, give them the money. Give me 1,000 first so I can change into better clothes, have a meal, and get a room on different floors. After the stuff is put away, I'll tell you where to get the rest of the money. As you say, boss. The two men who received the money were very happy. An hour later, they both changed their clothes and returned to the hotel. A step that seemed relatively difficult to Chen Chen was solved so easily. It was 8 o'clock in the evening, and Chen Chen's plan to burn down Henry Hotel began. It was 10 o'clock in the evening, which was when Henry Hotel was busiest. Chen Chen and Bai Go hid in the shadow of the hotel parking lot, carrying large backpacks on their chests. In the backpacks were gasoline and mixed fuel that they had already packed in glass bottles. They were waiting for Sure Dakai's signal. Once the other party confirmed that the thermite bombs had been placed, they would immediately begin to spread incendiary materials in the parking lot to create a fire big enough to attract everyone's attention. Chen Chen originally planned to hire gamblers to do this job, but after careful consideration, he found that this kind of direct, destructive work could not be trusted in the hands of those unreliable gamblers. Instead of betting on whether they have the courage and whether they can successfully complete the task, it is better to do it himself and evacuate immediately after the arrangement is completed. After all, the security around the parking lot was much weaker than that of the main body of the Henry Hotel, and there were no high walls or guardrails around it. They could calmly evacuate the parking lot after pouring the fuel, and then use a remote control device to ignite it at a location far away from the hotel. This is very safe. The only relatively difficult point is that it must not be discovered by scattered security guards. However, even this is not a big problem. After all, this is not Macau, and there is no fixed regulation for parking lot management. In the corner, Chen Chen even saw a few gamblers who had lost all their money in gambling and sleeping under other people's nanny cars. Similarly, the security guards in the distance also looked listless. Their salaries were not high, and they could not receive tips from customers for guarding the parking lot. It was really a bit difficult to ask them to have any work enthusiasm. So, under this circumstance, the actions of Chen Chen and the other person were almost unhindered. They successfully completed the survey of the parking lot environment, successfully found the ignition route, successfully determined the wind direction and burning range, and completed a simulated evacuation. According to the simulation, it only took them 2 minutes from pouring to evacuating and finally igniting the fire. Everything is ready. All that's left to do is wait quietly. In order to conceal his identity, Chen Chen was rummaging through the trash, like a gambler. But it was obvious that every trash can here had an owner. Before he could even take anything out of the trash can, he was immediately scolded and driven away. Seeing the man coming at him aggressively, Chen Chen tactfully left quickly. The security guard heard the noise and glanced at them, but did not move at all. The vigilance of these people was much worse than Chen Chen expected. This means that today's operation has almost been half successful. Finding a corner to sit down again, Chen Chen took out his cell phone and once again confirmed the situation with Sure Dakai and Bai Go. Everything went smoothly for Sure Dakai, who was on the lookout and monitoring the movements of the two gamblers in the casino of Henry Hotel. He confirmed that the gamblers had already checked into a room and gone upstairs, and their luggage had not been searched. As for the white dog, he determined his own ignition route. I have about 10 vehicles in total, and they can cover all of them. There were a few decorative shrubs nearby, so I threw a bottle in there too, thinking it would start a fire. Also, I saw a lot of plastic building materials on the construction site on the side of the parking lot. If they burn, the fire will probably be very big. I'll keep 2 bottles as backup. If the parking lot can't be burned, I'll find a chance to burn the construction site. Captain, is this idea okay? No problem, let's start setting it up. Chen Chen answered decisively. Then he hung up the phone, stood up, took out a bottle of gasoline from his backpack, quietly unscrewed the cap, and placed it at his feet. As long as Sure Dakai reports that the gambler has left the room, they will take action immediately. As time passed, the Henry Hotel was still bustling with people. They had no idea that this place, which was home to countless wealth and sin, would soon face a devastating disaster. Chen Chen couldn't help but wonder, facing such a thing, are these gamblers excited or regretful? They may get the pleasure of revenge on Gozhuang, but more likely, they will feel the regret of losing the only chance to turn things around. After all, no matter how much you curse the dealer, as long as the chips are placed in front of them, they will still go to the table without hesitation. Because in their hearts, they are always the chosen ones. No matter how shady the dog farm is, as long as they are lucky enough and the opportunity comes, they can still turn things around. Otherwise, how could those 2 gamblers decide to continue gambling without hesitation after hearing about the jammer? $10,000 is not a small number. If you work hard, even if you are heavily in debt, it is enough for many people to start over. But in fact, they did not realize that they had other ways to go. It makes people sad but also angry. But Chen Chen didn't have time to stop for them, because his phone had already rung, and Sure Dake's voice had come out. Old 4, I'm ready here. You guys can get moving quickly. Okay, here we come. Chen Chen kicked over the glass bottle on the ground, and then he began to move around the parking lot at the fastest speed that would not attract the attention of security. Glass bottles were put down one after another, and the spilled gasoline was connected into one piece. After a distance of 50 meters and covering 15 cars, Chen Chen and the white dog completed the reunion. He put down the backpack in front of him, took out the ignition device inside, and filled it with gasoline. Then he immediately took the white dog out of the parking lot, ran quickly to the corner of the street opposite the Henry Hotel, and called Sure Dakai again. Number 3, begin evacuation. Okay, I'm at the door, you go ahead. Sure Dakai's voice sounded a little nervous on the phone. Chen Chen saw a figure walking quickly out. The moment he walked through the hotel door, Chen Chen took out another mobile phone and dialed the number of the ignition device. The electric arc flickered slightly, and the gunpowder and alcohol vapor in the ignition device were ignited. Then the gasoline spilled on the outside exploded. Flames rose up, and the gasoline that had not yet had time to evaporate was fused into one piece under the action of other combustion aids. Within just a few seconds, Half of the parking lot turned into a sea of fire. The security at the Henry Hotel was completely confused. They had no idea where the fire started. Some people shouted and ran to get fire extinguishers, but most people just stood there, watching the fire burning more and more fiercely, at a loss as to what to do. In fact, there's a golden time for dealing with fires. Generally speaking, the development trend of a fire will be quickly curbed if the fire can be extinguished quickly before the initial fire source is burned out and other flammable materials are ignited. But the problem is that fire protection work is not very mature, even in some developed countries. How can it be much better in a shabby place like Laogai? Some people ran out with a fire extinguisher, but they didn't even know how to open the safety pin of the fire extinguisher. After finally opening the safety bolt and pressing the valve towards the fire point, the fire extinguisher only ridiculously spewed out a small puff of white smoke, and then it was directly declared a misfire. In just 2 minutes, the fire quickly developed to a degree that was almost uncontrollable, and the temperature was getting higher and higher. Even though he was hundreds of meters away, Chen Chen could still feel the heat wave coming towards him. Ga had already walked out of the hotel and reunited with Chen Chen and Bai Go. The three of them stood across the street and watched like other ordinary people watching the excitement, listening to others whispering about the sudden fire. This fire is quite big, so it's hard to put it out, right? Someone in the crowd spoke up. I can't put it out. The car is already on fire. There's no point in putting it out. This parking lot is about to burn down. Let's run quickly. If the hotel catches fire, it will be a big problem. How did it catch fire? Who knows? It suddenly caught fire. Maybe one of the cars was leaking oil. With such a big fire, why don't people in the hotel evacuate? I don't know. They value money over life. That's what gamblers do. More and more people came to watch the fun, and the discussion became louder and louder. And at this moment, the door of Henry Hotel finally opened. The guests inside filed out one after another, and for a moment, Chen Chen even felt a little surprised. He thought that the fire would have to burn for a while before these people realized the danger and started to evacuate. However, now that the evacuation has gone smoothly, it is time to start my next plan. Chen Chen waited patiently. After 20 minutes, when he saw the flow of people at the hotel in trance gradually decreasing and all the security personnel gathered in the lobby to clear the area, he realized that the time had come. The guests have finished evacuating, and it's time to fire the thermite bombs. He nodded to Ga, then took out his cell phone and dialed the number that would detonate the entire building. After a brief pause, the call was disconnected. Chen Chen and the other two looked towards the Henry Hotel building, patiently waiting for the explosion. But 10 seconds passed, and the explosion he expected did not happen. Just when he thought that the detonator had malfunctioned and the operation had failed, a room on the 4th floor of the hotel facing the street suddenly exploded with a dazzling bright yellow light. Under the high temperature of 3,000 degrees, the entire room was instantly covered by metal heat flow, and in the confined space, the explosion occurred almost in an instant. Flames rose up, and everything in the room began to burn rapidly. Curtains, floor stalls, furniture. Then, the unburned aluminum powder and oxidizer burned the walls, and the flames quickly penetrated the door and began to spread to the corridor. The air was filled with smoke, and the thermite mixed with a large amount of PP powder emitted unparalleled power. Through the window of the room on the 3rd floor, Chen Chen even saw a scene that shocked him greatly. The floor has been burned through. Flames were dripping from the ceiling. The fire brigade had arrived a long time ago, but there were only a few fire trucks in the entire Old Street area parked in the parking lot, and they had no time to deal with the fire inside the hotel. The only chance has been missed. The entire hotel corridor was quickly engulfed in flames, and in fact, the fire started not only on the 4th floor. The thermite bomb in the room on the 19th floor had also exploded, and the fire began to spread from top to bottom. Within 5 minutes, the fire spread to the adjacent floors, and the last few people in the building who had tried to put out the fire evacuated. Within 10 minutes, thick smoke enveloped the entire building. In 15 minutes, the elevator shaft was engulfed. At this point, even if the most professional fire brigade came, it would be powerless to save the situation. Under the chimney effect, the fire also began to develop like an elevator. It took 20 minutes to burn from the 4th floor to the 6th floor, but only 5 minutes to burn from the 6th floor to the 15th floor. Floor-by-floor explosions occurred one after another. And under the high temperature of thousands of degrees, even the most non-flammable materials began to burn fiercely. It took less than an hour from the time the fire started to the time the entire building was engulfed. Explosions rang out one after another. The fire in the lobby on the 1st floor was particularly fierce. The flames even ignited the parking lot where the fire had been extinguished. There was no other way, so the fire trucks and firefighters evacuated the hotel after confirming that there was no one left. All they could do was to cool down the surrounding buildings to prevent the fire from spreading further. Henry Hotel, which was originally a landmark building in the old street, has now become the brightest torch in the night. In its sinful life, perhaps only the moment of destruction was truly stunningly brilliant. This shocking scene silenced all the onlookers. The white dog opened his mouth and whispered as if talking to himself. Is this fire so fast? Chen Chen nodded and replied, normal range. In the MGM fire incident, the source of the fire was just a small leakage circuit, even inside the wall. The initial flames smoldered for more than 10 minutes before finally breaking through the wall and burning. The flames were not big at that time, and the fire started in the restaurant where there was plenty of water. But even in this situation, the fire quickly spread to the entire 1st floor lobby and burned down the entire 1st floor. Now, for a high-rise building like the Henry Hotel, which may not even have an automatic sprinkler system, it is already very strong to be able to hold up for an hour. Hearing Chen Chen's words, Bai Go nodded. It's amazing. Fire and water are merciless. Today I really felt the mercilessness of fire and water. Last time at Hexinzu, I didn't think it was a big deal, but this time, before he could finish his words, Dakai suddenly grabbed the two men's arms. Then he said, I saw Wei Chaoran. Following the direction of Dakai's gaze, Chen Chen immediately noticed the man who was surrounded by security personnel and was shouting angrily. His movements were somewhat hysterical, and his voice was filled with endless anger. Chen Chen could fully understand his anger. After all, this was the business he had worked hard to build throughout his life. But the angrier he got, the funnier Chen Chen found it. Didn't expect that? Wealth gained through sin will eventually be burned in sin. It's a pity that under the current circumstances, it is not possible to kill Wei Chaoran directly. There are too many people and the guards are too tight. If I kill him, I won't be able to escape. If only I had a gun at this time. If I shoot him in the crowd, no one would notice it. Chen Chen sighed in disappointment and said, forget it, let's go first. Us. However, before he could finish his words, Wei Chaoran in the distance suddenly made an unexpected move. He dispersed the security forces and asked most of them to go to the front of the hotel to do the work of putting out the fire and comforting the guests. He himself, accompanied by only a driver and two guards, got back into his iconic Lexus. Chen Chen's eyes lit up. This is a great opportunity. The enemy will not always make mistakes, but he will not never make mistakes either. And as long as you seize the mistakes made by the enemy, you can win. He turned to the white dog and whispered, gasoline. How many bottles do you have left? The white dog was stunned for a moment, then replied, 2 bottles. That's enough. Chen Chen stared closely at the Lexus that was slowly moving through the crowd. Behind it is a boundless fire, and soon it will be engulfed in the fire. At this moment, Chen Chen was holding a bottle of quickly made cocktail in his hand. The fire core is made of cotton cloth torn from clothes, and the bottle is a Red Star Ergo Tube bottle commonly seen in the old street. The content of the bottle is a mixture of a large amount of gasoline, a small amount of alcohol, and a small amount of PP powder. The function of this thing has been proven decades ago, and it tastes better if you shake it well before use. However, the one who was going to drink this cocktail was not Chen Chen, but Wei Chaoran. The sudden fire had obviously clouded his mind, causing him to make the foolish arrangement of relocating security, even though he knew someone was trying to harm him. Of course, on the other hand, his choice was not too wrong. Gun control in Kokong was extremely strict during this period, and he really didn't think there would be anything wrong with him driving away in a bulletproof car with 3 security guards. On the other hand, there is little overlap between arsonists and murderers. They are not the kind of psychopaths with antisocial personalities who only dare to set fires and cause damage in secret during acts of revenge. They usually do not have the courage to kill someone in person. Unfortunately, he didn't know who his enemy was. As far as Chen Chen and his group of desperate men are concerned, they are not only brave but also very powerful. After confirming that Wei Chaoran only had 1 car, Chen Chen immediately arranged the 3 men to split into 2 groups. Dakai was responsible for following the slow-moving vehicle on foot and pointing out the direction, while Chen Chen and Bai Go walked along the path, trying to find a suitable location to set up an ambush before the car arrived. This is a rather risky plan, but if one wants to kill Wei Chaoran, there is no better opportunity than this. Beheading is always difficult. If you do it in a city, even if you have a gun in your hand, after killing the target, you may still face the risk of being hunted down by the entire city and then surrounded and killed. But today is different. Today's old street is a chaotic old street. Almost all police battalions have been mobilized to maintain order near the Henry group. If they could kill Wei Chaoran at this time when all forces were caught off guard, the 3 of them would have a chance to evacuate safely without alerting anyone else. Yes, they had no proper weapons, nor any protective gear. But so what? All they had to do was find a street corner, light a Molotov cocktail, and then throw it at Wei Chaoran's Lexus. If you can burn them to death, burn them to death. If you can't, then forget it. As Chen Chen ran, the crowds of people around him gradually became sparse. At first, there were cars from the police camp passing by on the road, but gradually, even these cars disappeared. The matter was too serious and the situation was too chaotic. The fire burned down not only the Henry Hotel building, but also the gamblers' superstition and fanaticism towards the old street. If this is not dealt with promptly, those who win money will make a fuss, and those who lose money will make even more of a fuss. Therefore, they must arrive as soon as possible. Even if they are not from the same family as Wei Chaoran, they must lend a helping hand at this time. This is the common idea of all forces in Laojia, and it is also Wei Chaoran's idea. At this moment, he was sitting in the Lexus and making frantic phone calls, seeking help from the forces behind him, and had already made an appointment for an interview. The road to the Mangdamba military camp was not far, but what he didn't know was that he might never be able to finish this road. After the Lexus turned onto the last crowded street, Chen Chen heard Dakai's report on his cell phone. The target has changed. He is definitely going to Mangdamba. We can set up an ambush near the temple, where the streets are the narrowest. After we kill them, we can evacuate directly eastward through Old Street Park. Clear. Chen Chen answered quickly, then sped up and ran towards the Old Street Temple with a white dog. At this time, their location was nearly 1 kilometer away from the temple in a straight line. Theoretically, it was impossible for a person to outrun a car. However, the poor urban planning of the old street gave them an opportunity. By following the small road, their speed was even faster than the Lexus taking the main road. It took less than 5 minutes for the 2 lightly equipped people to reach the vicinity of the big temple. Afterwards, Chen Chen looked around and found an excellent ambush point. That was the intersection of the main street and Damyao Road. If Wei Chaoran wanted to go to Mangdamba, he had to slow down and turn east onto Damyao Road. The moment he turns the corner is the best time to make a cocktail. What's even better is that there is a long section of low wall that can be used. Chen Chen handed the cocktail in his hand to Bai Go, and then said, "Hide behind the wall next to you, and throw a Molotov cocktail when you see a car coming." Remember, throw one first, and if they stop and get out, throw the other one. Pay attention to relocating, and use the wall as cover. Clear. The white dog answered breathlessly, and then asked, Captain, what about you? I'll be waiting on the other side. I'll help you get the driver's attention. Chen Chen drew out the dagger he carried with him, and then said, if they get off the car, I will kill them from behind. As soon as the voice fell, Shurdakai's voice came from the phone again. The target is almost there, about 300 meters away. Without time to make any further arrangements, Chen Chen crossed the narrow Dimiao road in one step and then hid behind an advertising billboard on the roadside. He hid the dagger behind his back and leaned his body against the wall in a relaxed posture, but in fact only he knew that the muscles in his legs were completely tense. It took Lexus less than half a minute to cover the distance of 300 meters. It was going very fast, but had to slow down at the corner of the road. The headlights swept across Chen Chen's face. He pretended to be dazzled by the lights and raised his left hand to cover his eyes. The driver in the car just glanced at him and then turned his eyes back to the road. It was during this distraction of less than a second that the white dog fired the Molotov cocktail. A fireball suddenly flew over the wall and hit the side of the Lexus near the roof accurately. Bang! The glass bottle shattered and the flames burst into flames. A harsh, teeth-grinding brake sound was heard, and Chen Chen suddenly turned around and hid behind a corner of the street. At this moment, all four people in the car fell into chaos. They didn't know whether they should get off the bus because they didn't know if there were any enemies around. But if they didn't get out of the car, the flames would eventually suffocate them all. Want to lower the window and shoot? Are you crazy? Do you think the fire is coming in too slowly? In a dilemma, Lexus moved forward more than 10 meters in a daze. But the fire grew bigger and bigger, and they had to make a choice. Drive forward. On the right. On the right. Get out of the car. Watch to the right. Chen Chen vaguely heard someone shouting in the car, and then the door of the Lexus opened, and the guards in the passenger seat and the back seat got out of the car, raised their rifles, and fired in the direction of the white dog. Bang, 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 bang. The sound of gunfire suddenly tore through the night sky of the old street, but the bullets merely passed through the void. They couldn't hit anything at all, because the moment the Molotov cocktail was launched, the white dog had already moved to another position according to Chen Chen's pre-planned plan. Before they found the white dog, another Molotov cocktail flew over the wall and over their heads. The flames were still spreading, and there was no place to stand near the car. The first guard to get off the car was directly covered by flames and fell to the ground screaming. Another guard wanted to rescue him, but had no idea where to start. The driver came out of the car coughing, holding a gun in one hand and helping Wei Chaoran out of the back seat with the other. The two men retreated towards Chen Chen, seemingly trying to find cover. In their view, the enemy came from the right, so isn't it normal to look for cover on the left? What they don't know is that there are actually people on the left. Chen Chen carefully blocked their blind spot and went around behind them. But he was not in a hurry to find Wei Chaoran. He simply rushed quickly behind the only remaining guard who was about to retreat with the driver and stabbed him directly in the throat. Then he grabbed the guard's gun and turned it around, pointing it at the unsuspecting driver. Bang, bang, bang. With a short burst of shots, the driver's crown flew up and his body fell straight forward. While Wei Chaoran was stunned, Chen Chen took a step back and shot and killed another guard who was still struggling in the fire. Finally, it's Wei Chaoran. Still a short burst of fire. The last two bullets in the chamber were emptied. Chen Chen quickly searched the guard's body, but did not find the spare magazine. But this is not important anymore, because Wei Chaoran has fallen on his back on the ground, his body twitching constantly. The distance is less than 20 meters. Chen Chen dropped his gun, but did not rush forward. He went around the wall and ran eastward for a while, avoiding Wei Chaoran's possible shooting range. Then he rushed from the side and stepped on Wei Chaoran's chest. Wei Chaoran, who was not yet dead and was completely powerless, became completely paralyzed. He was still conscious, and he still wanted to resist. But the gun was a few meters away, and the enemy's knife was already at his throat. The cold touch of the blade made him extremely desperate. He opened his eyes blankly, trying to see the enemy's face clearly. But he could see nothing. Behind this enemy is the Lexus that is burning fiercely. And further away is the Henry Hotel, which stands like a torch. The flames were so bright that the enemy before them looked as gloomy as the abyss. In a trance, Wei Chaoran heard the voice of the enemy. He said, "Old Wei, please help me take good care of your brother." Back to the anti-Japanese memorial, Chen Chen led the three people who escaped from Kokong to reunite with the reception team. This time the operation went smoothly. The Wei family was not only beheaded, but to some extent it could even be said that they were crushed into powder. The main leaders of the Wei family have all died, and the only ones left in the family are Wei Rong, who has no control over the overall situation, and his underage son Wei Qingtao. The Henry Hotel was burned to ashes, and the entire Henry group suffered a severe blow. The gamblers on whom the Wei family depended for their survival would inevitably leave them and would no longer be able to provide fresh blood. More importantly, their military power was actually taken away. They were directly defeated or dispersed. Among these three conditions, if a family was affected by just one of them, it would be a major blow, and the Wei family had all three, which could be said to be the worst possible outcome. This is good news for Peng Diren and the Dongfeng Corps, because it means that it will be impossible to organize retaliation from the coup army in a short period of time. However, if we are precise about the Dongfeng Corps itself, this is not purely good news, because the situation in Kokong was really completely disrupted, and after being deeply involved, it has become increasingly difficult for the Dongfeng Corps to get out. Thinking of this, Chen Chen sighed and said, "Things in this world really are rolling down like an avalanche. I just wanted to seek revenge on by swatching, but now the Wei family died first. What's the logic behind this? Wei Chaoran will probably never figure out until his death how this happened to him. Anyway, the trouble we've caused to Kokong has really reached the top level. In the next period of time, I guess everyone will try to find us, the real culprit. And they've seen our fighting style and our paramount predator. I guess our identity won't be hidden for long. It will be very troublesome. Everyone in the 4 major families has suffered losses, and we will face endless retaliation. What should we do then? The white dog asks subconsciously. What if we redistribute the benefits and give the Wei family's benefits to others? If everyone loses, will the problem be solved? Why should we let them profit? Before Chen Chen could answer, Bao Qi asked, why not just kill them all? We can give them a choice. Either they take what they have and leave, or they can't leave anything behind. Isn't that reasonable? Any rational person would choose the former, right? But the premise for this is that you can really kill them all? Okay. The white dog waved his hands frantically and continued. I don't understand. I really don't understand. Why do we always solve problems in such a crude and simplistic way? Can't we learn from the big bosses and play tricks like them? The leader is concentrating on how to burn people to ashes. Li Bang said slowly. Yes. Sure Dekai nodded in agreement, and then continued. And our approach is really effective, at least so far. Of course, I'm not saying that we really have to kill all the remaining people from the 4 major families right away. What I mean is that this is at least an option that we can choose. Forget it. Let's not discuss such a radical plan for now. Chen Chen stopped the discussion and continued. Let's see how Peng Diren talks first. If he can successfully convince by swatching to hand over Ming Xuechang, then we can solve 2 problems at once. We can avenge Ming Xuechang and at the same time, clear the charges against us. The latter is still very important. Our identities will be exposed sooner or later. We cannot have any marks belonging to other forces, nor can we have any dark history that may lead to attacks. I understand. The white dog nodded immediately. In his opinion, this was absolutely reasonable. Nonsense, you a white glove from the north, are said to be the source of the unrest in Kokong, and a black glove who betrayed the Prung family and was used by the Burmese. It would be a miracle if you can accept this. What is no marks? It sounds so mysterious, but in essence, isn't it just because they are afraid of causing unnecessary disputes and affecting your subsequent activities in northern Myanmar? Looking at his calm expression, Chen Chen couldn't help but feel angry. You understand it again? I made you understand it all. I didn't do anything at all. Why did you insist on putting this green dress on me? It's not just the white dog. It's the same for everyone else. It would be fine if you said that I really have this clothes, but the problem is that the clothes are not really mine. Chen Chen sighed, and after a few seconds of silence, he spoke again. The negotiations with Peng Diren will take some time, and we can't be idle during this time. Wei Chaoren and Wei Huairen are dead, but Wei Rong and Wei Qingtao are still alive. These 2 people are a very real problem. Chen Chen frowned. In fact, according to his idea, he was planning to kill Wei Chaoren's children. Because in his memory, in the following 10 years, Wei Rong and Wei Qingtao controlled a large amount of Wei family assets and established a huge gambling and online fraud industry chain. The crimes they committed cannot be said to be numerous, but should be said to be too numerous to list. Even without mentioning this aspect, the fact that these 2 people can achieve the same level as he did in his previous life shows that they are really not the young masters and princesses in the eyes of some people, but ruthless people with strong abilities who can stand on their own. If I keep such a person, he will pose a huge threat to me. Cutting the weeds and eradicating them completely is the natural choice. But the problem is that at this point in time, both of them are too young. Wei Rong had just turned 24 and had not yet officially taken over the family business, while Wei Qingtao had just turned 13 and could even be said to be still naive. It is difficult to punish a person for a crime that has not happened. Otherwise, wouldn't it be like a Blade Runner? Therefore, there is no doubt that the current situation has become a classic dilemma. When enforcing justice, do the devil's family members need to pay with their lives? If parents commit corruption, should their daughter be punished equally? From a legal perspective, the answer to this question must be no. After all, the law has its limits, and once it involves collective punishment, social order will quickly get out of control. But whether from a moral or interest perspective, the victims will give an affirmative answer to this question, because they know that only by completely eliminating the unstable factors can their own safety be most effectively guaranteed. Looking at Chen Chen's expression, Shi Dekai also guessed what he was thinking. After hesitating for a few seconds, he said, how about letting Peng Diren handle it? He can handle a fucking nut. Chen Chen shook his head disdainfully and replied, if he could handle it, Peng Jiaxing wouldn't have been driven out of Kokong so easily. Vote. Raise your hands if you support killing them all, and don't move if you support letting them go. It has to be said that this was a heavy decision. Even the other 5 people who did not fully understand the situation hesitated for half a minute before expressing their opinions one by one. And there were a total of 5 hands raised. The first to speak was Li Bang. I must avenge myself against the Border Defense Battalion, and the Wei family would be best wiped out. Chen Chen nodded slightly. It made sense. Unlike other people, Li Bang has a serious and direct blood feud with the Wei family's border defense camp. If possible, he must kill the entire Wei family. This is a very simple theory of blood revenge. It may not be suitable in other places, but in northern Myanmar, you really can't find any fault with it. The next person to express his views was Shi Dekai. I have to stay alive, and I want to eliminate any factors that might put me in danger. It's reasonable and in line with his character. In his opinion, what are the Wei family? He doesn't know them, has no feelings for them, and as long as he can live, she will die, and it won't cause any emotional fluctuations in him. Chen Chen nodded again and looked at Lin He. The latter paused, then hesitantly said, if she can live, then can I do whatever I want and leave the things to my son and daughter? Another irrefutable reason. It seems that this kid has taken to heart the theory of breaking through the ceiling that I told him. He really doesn't intend to engage in any literatism, such as treating people to dinner, writing poetry, and painting, but instead wants to blow up this ceiling completely. That's reasonable too. Next one is Bao Qi. He was much more rational. Wei Rong has to die. If we don't kill her, someone else will. We kill quickly and without pain. That makes sense. Chen Chen found that he had indeed overlooked one issue. That is, Wei Rong's death was actually a good thing for all other forces in northern Myanmar. What about you? Chen Chen finally looked at the white dog. Me? I think these remaining evil forces must be eradicated. The white dog said seriously. Chen Chen was speechless. Finally, he also raised his hand and said, Wei Rong must die if he deserves to die. As for Wei Qingtao, even in American movies, killing underage children is not allowed. Let's not be the villains. Let him fend for himself. Agree? Agree. Everyone answered at the same time. Chen Chen let out a long sigh, and then gave the order. Let's go back to Hongyan first. We don't need to take action immediately. The Wei family has already disbanded. As long as Wei Rong appears in the old street, there will always be a chance to catch her. Next, let's just wait quietly. When Ming Xuechang is handed over, we will consider the next plan. I just don't know if Ong Tingling can hold out for 3 days. You should still be alive, right? The 6-man group of the Dongfeng Corps soon returned to Hongyan, and when they arrived, Chen Chen was surprised to find that the number of people in the camp was even greater than when they first came. There were about 200 soldiers wearing the green uniforms of the Confederate Army, and they were busy setting up camp and restoring the destroyed buildings. When the sentries saw their armored jeep approaching, they immediately surrounded them, wanting to confirm their identities. But before they could open their mouths, they heard Peng Diren shouting in the distance. Commander Chen! Commander Chen! He ran quickly towards Chen Chen and the other 6, waving his arms as he ran. It can be said that his entire passionate state is so real that it couldn't be more real. The Sentinels were not ungrateful people. Seeing Peng Diren's reaction, they guessed that the person coming was no small figure, so they immediately saluted and let the jeep pass into the camp. Peng Diren personally instructed Lin He, who was driving, to stop the car. The latter's unfamiliar driving skills almost caused him to fall headfirst, but Peng Diren didn't care at all. Instead, he immediately helped Chen Chen open the door and said, Captain Chen, you did a great job. You did a great job. The Henry Hotel burned down, Wei Chaoran is dead, and now the whole of Kokong is in chaos. I just spoke to Bai Suoching on the phone. Also present were Niu Qin and Su Minwu. They have accepted our conditions. Ming Xuechang is dead. Within 2 days at the latest, Ming Xuechang will come forward and confess to the crime of murder. At that time, they will hand Ming Xuechang directly to us. As for how you deal with him, it is all up to Commander Chen. So fast. After listening to Peng Diren's report, Chen Chen asked in surprise. He thought it would take at least 1 or 2 days for the Bai family to make this decision, but now it seems that they reacted quickly. Yes, that fast. They can't wait any longer. The fall of the Wei family and the fire at Henry Hotel have had a huge impact on the situation in Kokong. Any unstable factors at this time could cause huge problems, so... Anyway, our business is almost over. That's good. Chen Chen did not reveal his true purpose, but said, Wei Chaoran and Wei Huairan are both dead, but the bloodline of the Wei family is still alive. The Wei family, including Wei Rong and Wei Qingtao, are still alive. Maybe Wei Rong is dead. When did it happen? Chen Chen was completely shocked. So I held a whole meeting on political ideology, finally came to a conclusion and reached a consensus, and you turn around and told me that I wasted my time. Who was so quick to act? I received the news 2 hours ago. It was around 4 a.m. that the Wei family's villa was attacked. The first to mutiny were the Wei family's personal soldiers. They looted all the valuables from the Wei family, but no one was hurt. Then a gang of gamblers broke into the villa. Presumably, they wanted to take back what was theirs, but the problem was there was nothing left for them to take. So, they killed the Wei family and gave Wei Rong and a few others to. Understood. Chen Chen interrupted Peng Diren's narration. At this moment, he felt that the ending of the Wei family was full of a sense of absurdity that was extremely reasonable. The reason is that after a family suffers a devastating blow, it is normal for the family to scatter and add insult to injury. The absurdity is that the crimes that the Wei family members inflicted on others were actually pinned on them. Perhaps in northern Myanmar, the final outcome of every evil person is to be bitten back by the evil they export. All I can say is that you deserve it. Of course, there is also the word what a pity. Unfortunately, it was not Li Bang who took action. Wei Rong's death can be said to have removed the last burden imposed on the Dongfeng Corps in the short term, and at the same time, it also gave Chen Chen a new perspective on the problem. That is, he really doesn't need to think too much about the so-called moral dilemma, because in this land where there are no rules at all, the most basic and bottom-line humanity and morality he upholds are often of no use. Some people will be eager to help him solve those difficult problems, while others will willingly bear the bitter consequences and infamy for very little benefit. There was no need for him to do anything himself, not even a hint, just like this time. Yes, I killed Wei Chaoran and Wei Huairan, but they both deserved it. Was it wrong of me to kill them? As for Wei Rong, it's none of my business. Oh, you mean I know that if I kill Wei Chaoran, Wei Rong will definitely die? I also know that if I kill Nuakong, a group of his child soldiers who are poisoned to the bone will also die. So you mean that I should not kill Nuakong either? That doesn't make sense, right? Obviously, no one would use such a presumption of guilt to restrict Chen Chen, and this is also the best solution for him to not add new sins on the basis of an original sin. Of course, it is only the best short-term solution. He can make black gloves, but there must be darker gloves under the black gloves, which are specially used to solve such difficult problems. Chen Chen secretly made a decision in his heart. and put on the agenda some things that he had imagined but did not have the time to implement. However, this matter must be considered after all the matters in Kokong are completed and he returns to Mengka. As for now, let's wait until Ming Xuechang's matter is over. Chen Chen shook his head gently and slowly lay down on the camp bed. Except for Li Bang, who was on guard, everyone else had fallen into a sound sleep. During these few days, they were really overly tired. From the first killing in Gongtang, to the subsequent kidnapping, to the defeat of the Border Defense Battalion with infiltration tactics, and finally to the assassination of Wei Chaoren, they hardly stopped for a moment and did not get enough rest. Everyone's physical condition had reached its limit, and after the sudden relaxation, they were indeed a little overwhelmed, but while others could sleep, Chen Chen couldn't really fall asleep. He simply took a nap for 2 hours and got up before noon. When he opened his eyes, he saw Bao Qi, who had taken over Li Bang's guard duty, and a somewhat familiar figure. The one called Ning Ming. At that time, he followed himself and Li Bang to divide the battlefield. Although his tactical moves were not standard, he had his own way of fighting. The most important thing is that, unlike other soldiers of the Allied forces, he is very courageous and has strong subjective initiative. In general, this is a promising talent. When he was on the battlefield, Chen Chen had the idea of recruiting him to the Dongfang Corps, but because there were too many things to do and he was not completely sure whether he could be trusted, he did not bring it up on the spot. But now I can ask. So he walked behind Bao Qi, patted his shoulder, and signaled him to continue resting. He then walked to Ning Ming and started talking to him. "Remember me?" Chen Chen asked. "Report to the commander." "I remember." Ning Ming answered loudly, and Chen Chen quickly stretched out his hand and made a downward motion and said, "Keep your voice down. They are still resting. Your name is Ning Ming, right?" "Sir, yes, my name is Ning Ming." Ning Ming's voice became softer, but his answer was still serious. This made Chen Chen a little surprised. There were really not many soldiers with this style in the Allied forces. So he continued to ask, "Are you Commander Peng Jiaxing's personal soldier?" "Relax, don't be so serious. Let's just chat casually." After hearing what Chen Chen said, Ning Ming finally relaxed a little. He replied, "Sir, I was not originally Commander Peng's man. I originally worked with Wei Chaoren. I couldn't stand their style, so I voted for Commander Peng. I've been here for less than a year, but I've fought in a few battles before. They were small battles, not as comfortable as the ones the commander fought." "Wei Chaoren soldiers? Don't like his style?" "What style?" Chen Chen subconsciously repeated Ning Ming's answer, with confusion written all over his face. What the hell? Among the militias of these families, are there soldiers who don't like their superior style? Even if there really are, if Wei Chaoren can't do it, can Peng Jiaxing do it? If you are not willing to fight for Wei Chaoren, are you willing to fight for Peng Jiaxing? This reason is somewhat far-fetched, and it also makes Chen Chen a little suspicious. And then, Ning Ming's words make him more suspicious. "Yes, sir. Wei Chaoren's private soldiers are too chaotic. They will make any money and do anything. They already collect taxes, and the soldiers under them want to collect them again. I was originally a small businessman, and I joined the army because I couldn't bear the taxes. But when it came time for me to collect taxes, I really couldn't bring myself to do it. So I couldn't make it in the Wei family anymore, so I came to the Peng family again." But Ning Ming didn't continue speaking, but Chen Chen knew what he really wanted to say after this. But all crows are black. Does Wei Chaoren really think that Peng Jiaxing doesn't do what Wei Chaoren is doing? If we have to say what makes Peng Jiaxing stronger than the so-called four major families, it is probably that his own identity is relatively good, and he is also good at public opinion propaganda. To be honest, if we follow this logic, it is understandable that Ning Ming joined the Peng family. But here lies the problem. For a person who is used to being oppressed, after he instantly transforms from the identity of the oppressed to the identity of the oppressor, can he really stick to his original intention? Maybe other places, but northern Myanmar? It's incredible. Chen Chen frowned and continued to ask, "Don't you have any selfish motives when you join the army? Isn't this too abnormal?" Hearing this, Ning Ming immediately shook his head and then replied, "Sir, I have selfish motives. To be frank, I just want to make a career out of it. I'm not that great, saying I'm speaking for the people, but at least I thought that when I become big, I could do something a little different, even if I banned drugs in the army and stopped my men from taking drugs. If they didn't take drugs, they wouldn't be so short of money. If they didn't lack money, they wouldn't exploit the people so cruelly." Having said that, Ning Ming sighed. "But I found that the drug abuse in the Allied forces is even worse than that in the Wei family, and it is also harder to move up in the Allied forces than in the Wei family. I've practiced much better than the previous captain, but I just can't be the captain. You told me this. Aren't you afraid that I will tell Peng Diren?" Chen Chen interrupted him and asked, "I'm planning to leave. I've told Peng Diren about it. Where are you going?" "Go to Yunnan instead of Kokong. Even if I go to Nansan to do some jade business, it's better than here." "That's good." Chen Chen nodded thoughtfully and temporarily gave up the idea of recruiting Ning Ming. Frankly speaking, Ning Ming's experience is a very common experience among the soldiers of the ethnic armed groups in northern Myanmar. No flaws can be found from any angle. They were forced to join the army, then moved elsewhere after being suppressed, and finally left in frustration. If you ask around in the Allied army camp, you'll find at least 3 or 4 of them have experienced the same thing. But the problem is that Ning Ming appeared too calm and too clear-headed. Even the way he spoke and expressed himself was different from those illiterate soldiers. His background must be more complicated than what he said. If that's the case, it's best not to jump to conclusions before you figure it out completely. It is true that the Dongfeng Corps is short of people, but they cannot just recruit everyone indiscriminately. If he wanted to accept him, he had to get in touch with him more and thoroughly understand the story behind him. So, Chen Chen didn't continue talking to him, but sent Ning Ming away on the grounds of standing guard. He ate the breakfast sent by Peng Diren and listened to the Kokong news on the radio. Soon, The news he had been waiting for came out from the radio, just so ordinary. According to reports, the real culprit of the August 24th bombing has been arrested. On the morning of March 10th, with solid evidence and mature conditions, the Laokai police launched an arrest warrant for Ming Momu in accordance with the law and successfully arrested him at around 8 a.m. According to police officers involved in the operation, Ming was the real mastermind of the August 24th bombing. After committing the tragedy, he used various methods to frame and cover up his crimes in an attempt to escape legal sanctions. During this operation, the police seized a large amount of arms, explosives, and various physical evidence related to the August 24th bombing, which clarified Ming's crime and cleared the wrong person of his grievances. The police and the Autonomous Region Leadership Committee jointly decided to revoke the arrest warrants previously issued for Bao Qi and others, and compensate their affected families. The announcer's voice on the radio continued, and other members of the Dongfeng Corps had already gathered around. After hearing the content of the broadcast, Bao Qi said thoughtfully, "Could it be that the Bai family regarded my father as the core figure of the Allied forces? Why did they mention my name specifically? That's normal." Chen Chen nodded slightly, and then continued, "Among the four of us, only your family escaped from them and joined the Allied forces. Now that Prung Diren has proposed to make the truth public and clear the injustice, it is easy for him to think that Prung Diren wants to give an explanation to certain people. And these certain people refer to your parents. This is good. At least our identity security can be improved to a higher level. Let's go. The results are out. Now we have to find Prung Diren to confirm the next plan. Clear." Everyone immediately stood up and got ready, and as soon as they put on their equipment, Prung Diren came over directly. "Commander Chen, the results are out. By Suwaching, hand over Ming Xuechang this afternoon. We will provide them with the location of Ong Tingling at the same time. After Ong Tingling is rescued, we will start further negotiations and then determine how to deal with the prisoners." Things went smoothly. "Commander Chen, this is all thanks to you." Prung Diren had an excited look on his face. Of course, it was normal for him to be excited as he was able to force the so-called coup army to compromise in such a desperate situation and create a new opportunity for the Allied forces to counterattack. But of course, such excitement did not infect Chen Chen. He just asked calmly, "How will Ming Xuechang take over? Where is Ong Tingling?" "No interference. Remote handover." Prung Diren replied. "The police battalion will find a cage to lock up Ming Xuechang and then send a team to the vicinity of Hongyan. After we release the location information of Ong Tingling, they will leave. We can wait until they leave to receive it. But actually it's not that important whether we accept it or not. We have achieved our goal, right, sir?" "No, it's important." Chen Chen shook his head seriously and then said, "We must take revenge. Ming Xuechang must die." Hearing this, Prung Diren was stunned for a moment, but he quickly reacted. Yes, this so-called Dongfeng Corps, they originally came for revenge. However, their way of revenge made him forget their real purpose. So he quickly replied, "No problem. It's no problem to accept it. I'll make the arrangements." "Go and make the arrangements. After we get rid of Ming Xuechang, we'll leave." After a brief pause, Chen Chen continued, "By the way, let's settle our accounts. The $3.6 million for the car plus the $3 million you promised totals $6.6 million. When will it arrive?" Immediately, there was a hint of doubt in Prung Diren's eyes. He didn't understand when he had promised another $3 million. But this is not the point. $3 million is not a small amount, but it is not a lot either. If it can gain the trust of the Dongfeng Corps and the others behind the Dongfeng Corps, then this money is worth it. Even if we don't talk about the subsequent impact, the fact that the Dongfeng Corps has helped me establish the current situation, completely messed up Kokong, and created a unique opportunity for me is definitely worth tens of millions of dollars. Otherwise, if I rely on myself alone, when will I have the opportunity to counterattack? It's all gambling. How can you make a lot of money without placing a big bet? With this in mind, Prung Diren quickly arranged the transfer. In less than an hour, $6.6 million arrived in batches. Together with the $1.8 million received previously, Prung Diren has paid a total of $8.4 million. Chen Chen finally felt better. After all, their losses this time were quite significant. Not to mention the warrior vehicles, equipment, and ammunition. The Predator is a real priceless item. It only cost $1.6 million, but in fact, it was exchanged for his friendship with the Wanfeng Group and the potential benefits he provided to them. $3.6 million, I really didn't ask Prung Diren for more. I was still too lenient. It seems that I will have to expose Prung Diren's tricks on the condition of equipment sharing in the future. Chen Chen had a warm smile on his face, as if he was happily cooperating with Prung Diren. But in his heart, he was already thinking about the family property accumulated by the Prung family over the years. Looking at his smile, Prung Diren felt a little scared for no reason, but he didn't know what he had to worry about. However, he still had a lot of things to do, so after exchanging a few words with Chen Chen, he said goodbye and left, continuing to deal with various affairs in the camp. Chen Chen sat down and prepared to discuss the subsequent detailed plans with other members of the Dongfeng Corps. However, at this time, his phone suddenly rang. This place is close to Zhongshan Township in Yunnan, and the mobile signal is quite strong. However, the caller was from an unfamiliar number. "Hello, I am the shipwreck of the Dongfeng Corps." Chen Chen spoke. "Chen Chen, I'm Xiu. Chen Chen was stunned. "Are you coming here to call me to task so soon? This shouldn't happen. They shouldn't interfere in such a chaotic situation. What's the matter?" Chen Chen couldn't help but become alert, but Xiaoyu's next words made him freeze in place. She said, "There is a company that recently launched a new product. East Wind Warrior. You want it? Dongfeng Mengxi?" This bit of information did surprise Chen Chen, but what surprised him even more was that Xiaoyu called out his real name. "Chen Chen, There is no doubt that the information they possess has gone beyond the boundaries of the Dongfeng Corps and is traced back to their true identity. This is actually not surprising because with Ming Xuechang being arrested, the wanted warrant being cancelled, a lot of information being made public, and Xiaoyu already knowing that the Dongfeng Corps is in Laojia. If the intelligence department cannot integrate the intelligence and finally draw a conclusive conclusion, then there is really no need for them to work. Of course, Chen Chen had actually already prepared for his identity to be exposed. After all, compared to an ambiguous identity, what he needs more is a definite, reasonable, and controllable identity. Only in this way can he continue to develop smoothly and smoothly achieve cooperation with multiple forces. As for the strategies that we had thought of before, such as pretending to be a kite with a broken string or pretending to be a trained informant, they actually only look good. Facing the powerful intelligence agencies and verification system in the north, there is no room for operation at all. Therefore, Chen Chen was just surprised but not frightened. He walked out the door with the phone in his hand, and then asked in a low voice, "Have you figured it out?" "It's all clear now." Xiaoyu's voice revealed a sense of relaxation. And then, without waiting for Chen Chen to answer, she continued, "I thought it was abnormal for you to appear in Kokong before, but now it seems very reasonable. Save people, take revenge, and then solve the identity problem. Killing 3 birds with 1 stone. I have to say, you are ridiculously strong, not only in combat, but also in the overall situation. However, your methods are too cruel. Burning down the Henry Hotel could easily be defined as a terrorist attack. Have you not thought about the consequences? That it wasn't us?" Chen Chen said stubbornly. "Can you be more sincere? The fire has been put out. The pressure cooker you used to start the fire has been found. The homemade thermite bomb. Who else can do such a thing except you?" "It didn't burn?" Chen Chen asked subconsciously. "Do you admit you did it? Now what's the point of denying it at this time? But I must make it clear that we are not carrying out a terrorist attack. We just want to completely destroy the evil Lao Kai gangs, especially the pseudo-Myanmar military group represented by the Wei family. This is my simple sense of justice as a Kokong person. Is that okay?" "There is no problem at all. In fact, from my personal point of view, it is very satisfying." Xiaoyu on the other end of the phone sighed deeply. Compared to other people who didn't know the truth, she, who had been engaged in intelligence work for a long time, knew better than anyone what bad things the Wei family had done. So, emotionally or rationally, it was impossible for her to have any opinion about Chen Chen. However, as a staff member of an official intelligence agency, she has to consider more and more complex issues, so she can't do whatever she wants like Chen Chen. After hearing Xiaoyu's answer, Chen Chen felt relieved. His communication with Xiaoyu seemed to be people to people, but in fact it was organization to organization, and Xiaoyu's words also implicitly indicated a certain attitude. So he said, "That's all right, wait a moment." Xiaoyu interrupted him again. "Just because I say there's no problem doesn't mean you're really okay. On the contrary, you are now facing a much bigger problem. We can obtain the true identity information of your Dongfeng Corps, and other forces can also obtain it. It might take them a little longer, but not too long. This will cause a series of troubles, not just yours. A team with supreme equipment, amazing combat effectiveness, rapid development, fierce style, and even the ability to hand-make thermite bullets under limited conditions appeared in northern Myanmar. Do you know what this means? You're locked in with us. Whether you like it or not, you're locked in. I believe you don't want such a result." That's right. There is no doubt that Chen Chen has an inseparable affection for this big country in the north, because it is his real hometown and his spiritual sustenance. However, this does not mean that he is willing to hand over himself without reservation, because that means that his actions will be strictly restricted, and even many things he wants to do will no longer be possible. A secretive and close cooperation, rather than subordination, is the best relationship for both parties. "What are you going to do?" Chen Chen asked. "Before I tell you what we are going to do, you have to tell me where on earth did you learn all that? Military skills, combat techniques, and even chemistry knowledge." "I am a gifted, self-taught person." A very shameless answer, but extremely reasonable, because such people really exist. It goes without saying that the teachers are the chosen ones whose multifaceted wisdom has reached the extreme. Even if you go to the Middle East, you can find a group of guerrilla warfare geniuses. If their ideas are not wrong, or their routes are not deviated, they may become heroes of the world. Now Chen Chen just took the right path. Is this strange? Not surprising at all. Therefore, Xiaoyu was relieved by Chen Chen's answer. If Chen Chen intends to do something, that would really be a way to death. But he's obviously smart. So, she said, "That's a very good answer, and it suits your status. In this case, our subsequent strategy is very clear. Do you intend to end the Kokong incident as soon as possible? After that, you can continue to do a lot of your business. Isn't your predator gone? As I said, this car has recently been listed for export. Don't you want it?" "Want to?" Chen Chen answered without hesitation. "That's no problem. Just go and pay. What are the conditions?" "From now on, Ming Xuechang will definitely die, but Ming Xuechang's men have an arms smuggling route that transports arms from Banglong to Banlao and Ingpan. This route has huge problems. If you can solve this problem, I think some interested companies and individuals will be willing to pay for it. It's impossible to completely eliminate it." Chen Chen shook his head and explained. The existence of this route is not essentially in Ming Xuechang, but in the vast drug border of northern Myanmar. The drug traffickers on the other side of the border need weapons, so they have to take this route. Of course, there is a more important point. Yunnan is too close to Xi. There, don't say anything. Sorry, I spoke too quickly. Chen Chen closed his mouth in time and subconsciously slapped himself in the face. Damn it. How come after being reborn, the sense of confidentiality has faded? Or did I subconsciously treat Xiaoyu as my own and think I could say anything? Just now I thought you might really be a talented local. But now, I'm starting to doubt it again. Xiaoyu's tone sounded helpless. even a little confused, because she was really dizzy. Not only her, in fact, the entire department that was monitoring the call around her was stunned. Who on earth could think of this? A Kokong person? After taking a deep breath, she continued. There are some things we won't pursue too deeply, but you'd better let it go. In short, you have full freedom for what happens next. How about taking it one step at a time? No problem. Chen Chen answered decisively. Okay, that's settled. The car will be delivered directly to Munka, and you can go back to receive it. By the way, I'll give you another piece of information. Bai Suaching won't let this go, so be careful. I see. You can't catch us? I'm not asking you to be careful with him. I'm saying that you should be more cautious when doing some things. Clear. Chen Chen nodded again, and their formal communication finally ended. After exchanging a few pleasantries and expressing concern about Xiaoyu's injury, Chen Chen was about to hang up the phone. After saying goodbye to each other, Xiaoyu suddenly spoke again. Chen Chen, the person who can give you this identity is truly a genius. After hanging up the phone, Chen Chen's expression became a little complicated. Xiaoyu's last sentence was certainly not the so-called conclusion, but still a test. However, I didn't respond to her. This is actually a very normal thing. My situation is too special, so special that it is impossible to explain it clearly. No matter from which angle you look at it, you are more like a kite with a broken string, but no matter which direction you look, you cannot find your identity. So this is very embarrassing. From Xiaoyu's perspective, they had the blame for no apparent reason, and they were in a bad position, and they were in a bad position to take it, and they were in a bad position not to take it. Because you said you don't want to carry it, but he brought his own dry food, and the benefits he earned by himself are now in front of your mouth. If you don't eat it, it will be a bit of a waste. But if he recites it, who can say that he is trustworthy? If something goes wrong, it will not be a question of responsibility, but the entire development path will be seriously affected. So based on this judgment, it is actually easy to understand why Xiaoyu proposed a new task. Since it cannot be verified, let's just judge by the actions rather than the intentions. I'll make a pledge of allegiance, and you'll work for me. Even if we can't trust each other completely, at least the risk of hostility is eliminated. Cracking down on arms smuggling in Banglong is just such a token of our loyalty. How can we describe its sensitivity? Any force that is truly willing to participate in the attack on this route will naturally have one attribute. Never even think about cooperating with the Americans and will be permanently included in the CIA blacklist. If Chen Chen can really do this job and do it well, no matter you're a wild monkey from nowhere or the Monkey King, as long as you set out on the journey to the west to obtain Buddhist scriptures, you could be the fighting Buddha. The logic is clear and the future is within reach. Of course, the difficulties are also not small. Chen Chen did not know much about Ming Xuechang's smuggling route in his previous life because he was mainly responsible for anti-drug operations, and this line fell under the management of another team. However, in his limited memory, this line is indeed, as Xiaoyu said, it has not been eliminated after many years of fighting, and it can only be completely resolved after 2020 with the help of some special operations. Therefore, it is still very important to obtain more detailed intelligence. And that means that he must see Ming Xuechang alive. Thinking of this, Chen Chen put away the phone, then walked to Peng Diren's command tent and confirmed with him the details of the subsequent series of handover plans. What surprised Chen Chen a little was that the final handover location was set in the archway. Why did you choose this location? Chen Chen asked. This is the center point of both forces. The terrain is relatively open, so there is no possibility of an ambush. At the same time, the transportation is relatively developed, and the evacuation route is relatively smooth. Li Bang's family was originally in this village, right? They have already evacuated, so there shouldn't be any problems. It's not a big deal. I just asked casually. That's good. We expect to take over in 12 hours. Hand over in the early morning? Chen Chen frowned. What kind of hellish arrangement is this? Yes, there is nothing we can do about it. We choose the location, and Bai Suaching has to choose the time. We can't always have the upper hand. However, we can delay receiving the signal until daytime to avoid the enemy's advantage in night combat. This is not a big problem. It's no use. If they want to ambush, the result will be the same whether it's day or night. Chen Chen interrupted Peng Diren and continued. The time remains unchanged. We will go and receive it. You guys go by yourselves? Peng Diren asked in surprise. He originally thought that when Chen Chen said it's over, it was really over, but now it seems that he still has a chance. As long as there is a chance, that is enough. So, without waiting for Chen Chen to answer, he immediately said, Then I will arrange for someone to accompany you and do our best to protect your safety. Let the remaining two teams from the original breakout battle join in. They are more familiar with your tactics and have been on the battlefield before, so they are more courageous. The veterans who survive the battlefield are undoubtedly the backbone and elite of a team. Now, Peng Diren is willing to allocate all these elites to Chen Chen for use, which means that he really intends to place a heavy bet on Chen Chen. No matter what he wants, at least this attitude is commendable. Therefore, Chen Chen did not refuse. After communicating the details of the plan with Peng Diren, he quickly gathered all the teams and prepared to start the reception mission. Just as Peng Diren said, after a joint battle, the quality of the two allied army teams has improved visibly. Although they still look loose when standing together, at least there is some bloody murderous intent on their faces. Especially Ning Ming. His expression could even be said to be a little impatient for the battle. However, what disappointed him was that Chen Chen did not pay extra attention to him, but reorganized everyone according to the fixed process and divided them into 4 groups according to the organization of 6-person combat teams. Group 1 is the combat core of the Dongfeng Corps, including all the members of the Dongfeng Corps, and they act as the main shooter in the 4-4 system. The remaining 3 groups were responsible for cover, support, and secondary shooter roles respectively. After a simple training, everyone basically understood their positions. At this time, There were still 10 hours before the mission officially started. Chen Chen was not idle and simply led 4 teams to start drills in the Allied army camp. Attack, cover, support, evacuate. His training method is extremely direct, and the content of the training is simplified to the extreme. However, even with such pure utilitarianism training method, the proficiency of the 4 groups has been improved unprecedentedly. In just 4 hours, the team members were able to run, shoot, and throw according to Chen Chen's unified command. Even though they are not proficient in these movements, their coordination has basically been error-free. All the onlookers were stunned. Not only Peng Diren, but even ordinary soldiers who have never known what tactics or can appreciate the power contained in this simple system. After completing another central stripping and retreat drill, Peng Diren couldn't help but walk to Chen Chen's side and said, "Chief Chen, is this the 4-4 system?" He could not hide his excitement, because in his opinion, Chen Chen was simply a genius who could turn decay into magic. He knew better than anyone else the qualities of the Allied soldiers. It was not easy for such a group of people to remember the essentials of tactical movements, but they could actually play such a coordination? How did they do it? Seeing his expression, Chen Chen nodded slightly, and then replied, "This is a simplified version of the 4-4 system. Or in fact, it should be said that this is a special version of the 4-4 system. It only exists for this mission. Once the mission is over, this tactic will no longer have any meaning, because it is rigid, inflexible, and not scalable. Even though each of these people has practiced very well, as long as the conditions change slightly, all their tactical moves will be deformed. They are not learning tactics at all, they are just following a procedure." After Chen Chen finished speaking, Peng Diren nodded thoughtfully and did not ask any more questions. Chen Chen thought he had been persuaded by his explanation, but soon, Peng Diren suddenly asked, "So, they're like human code in a computer program? You still understand this?" Chen Chen couldn't help but be surprised. "Just understand a little bit. You have to keep learning. Commander Chen, please listen to my thinking and see if it is correct. These people actually form the skeleton of a dedicated program. The way they operate is like a program without emotions and independent judgment. You preset certain things first, and when the battlefield inputs a certain variable to them, they will feed back a fixed result. And if the input variable exceeds the preset range too much, they will crash like a program, right?" "That's right." Chen Chen nodded slightly. This was indeed a very apt description, and it was really difficult for Peng Diren to sum it up. It can be seen that this person is indeed quite skilled in fighting and training, and what he knows is not limited to the so-called political struggle. "Then, this is indeed what you call the special edition tactic." Peng Diren let out a long sigh and continued, "The scope of application is really narrow. Different procedures must be applied in every different battle. The workload is huge, and the demands on commanders are high. At the same time, the demands on intelligence capabilities are even higher. But this seems to be the best tactic to improve combat effectiveness in a short period of time." Peng Diren's eyes became brighter and brighter, and the look he gave Chen Chen began to reveal more things that were difficult to say. If it was just the 4-4 system, it would be fine. After all, in northern Myanmar, almost every frontline commander could talk about the 3-3 system and the 4-4 system. But a programmed 4-4 system? Who could come up with such a thing if they had not thoroughly understood the essence of the training and combat system? The personnel are not good enough? Well, I will customize a set of tactics for you. The purpose of this set of tactics is to use the commander's ability and extensive intelligence capabilities to make up for the lack of quality of individual combatants. Who else can do this except you? Moreover, this tactic will not always remain at the customization level. When enough programs are designed, and when different programs begin to complement and integrate with each other, won't a team's combat system gradually take shape? I understand. Chen Chen is pointing at me. It was inconvenient for him to teach me, so he used this method. Thinking of this, Peng Diren excitedly grabbed Chen Chen's hand and said, "Sir, thank you very much." Chen Chen looked puzzled. He had no idea what Peng Diren was thanking him for. But looking at the other person's expression, it seems that he really learned something. Just learn it. You can't do anything without me around anyway. At this time, there are only 6 hours left before the handover, and the reconnaissance personnel sent by Peng Diren have brought feedback information. No abnormalities were found around Gongtang village, and the situation is basically safe. It's time to go. Chen Chen waved his hand, and all the teams immediately started to get on the bus and drove towards Gongtang village. 6 hours later, Gongtang village. A military vehicle drove over from the direction of Laojia. After arriving at the designated location at the entrance of Gongtang village, four people on the vehicle lifted a metal cage from the back of the vehicle. After removing the oilcloth covering the cage, they quickly got back into the vehicle and left. The man who was left there and locked in the iron cage had a look of despair on his face. He slumped on the ground, staring blankly at the moon that was half blocked by the trees. He didn't know how things turned out like this, and he didn't know why he had to become a victim of this struggle. "I clearly didn't do anything. I just killed a dozen policemen according to the requirements of those higher-ups, and this was clearly agreed by them, and they had assured me that there would be absolutely no problems." Which link went wrong? In fact, he had thought about this question countless times. From the moment the enemy of the Allied soldier named Li Bang was killed, he realized that things had changed. Afterwards, Ong Tingling's disappearance and Wei Huairen's failure to suppress bandits raised his vigilance to the peak. He no longer went out, or even attended so-called important meetings, and all his actions were aimed solely at personal safety. But even so, he almost got into trouble and was almost burned to death in Henry Hotel. Yes, his caution saved his life, but Wei Chaoren was not so lucky. He died without any warning, like a dead dog, and was thrown on the roadside. The enemy's strength has exceeded the limits of Ming Xuechang's imagination. He has no idea who could do these things and who has the ability to do these things. Could it really be Bao Qi? The boy's father did have some background, but his background was not strong enough to allow the Allied forces to launch such a revenge, right? Moreover, even if they wanted to do it, could the Allied forces alone do it? Stop talking nonsense. I can't figure it out. I really can't figure it out. Ming Xuechang sighed deeply. He had already anticipated his own ending. He would surely die in a very miserable way, but right now, he couldn't even commit suicide. He sat on the ground helplessly, waiting for the enemy to arrive. The grass in the distance rustled, and the receiver hidden in the grass stood up and walked towards him. Ming Xuechang widened his eyes, trying to see the identities of the recipients. But a moment later, under the moonlight, the faces he saw made him freeze in shock. It's you! How could it be you? Ming Xuechang shouted hysterically. He couldn't believe what he saw because it was too absurd and unbelievable. However, the person opposite him did not show any emotion at all. The leading man looked at him coldly and then said, "Why can't it be us? Why? You don't want to see us? Commander Ming, it seems like you still owe me a commendation?" The process of receiving Ming Xuechang went smoothly. Chen Chen thought that Bai Suoqing would use him as bait to ambush, but in fact, no accidents happened until they brought Ming Xuechang back to Hanyan camp. The Allied sentries who were still on guard in the periphery reported that they had found no pursuers. The various forces in Laojia City were busy dealing with the aftermath of the Wei family, and there were no signs of mobilization of the other border defense battalions. Ming Xuechang seemed to have really been abandoned, which made Chen Chen feel a little unbelievable. After all, Ming Xuechang was no small figure. He had a lot of evidence of the four major families' involvement in evil activities. How could he be so confident in handing him over to the Allied forces? Surely there would be no problems? However, this question only went around in his mind, and soon, he figured out the key to the problem. Are you kidding? Most of Ming Xuechang's bad deeds were done when Peng Jiaxing was in office. Even if Peng Diren didn't know, would Peng Jiaxing not know? If the superior is changed, can the timeline be tampered with as well? Therefore, he really is against the four major families. No, now it is the three major families. He really poses no threat to the three major families. Perhaps the only new information is the information about the explosion. On the other hand, Ming Xuechang sent it here, but his family did not. Although Ming Xuechang is a bad man, he still has feelings for his family. Controlling his family can at least provide an extra layer of protection. In this case, it is not so easy to pry open his mouth. Maybe I can only use some tricks on him. Chen Chen looked at Ming Xuechang opposite him with a gloomy expression, and the latter sighed deeply after noticing his eyes. That I should have thought of it earlier. Only you would care so much about the so-called truth. The Allied forces may also care about this, but they cannot use such means to achieve their goals. There must be someone pushing them from behind. I thought of many people, but I didn't think it was you. I thought you just came back to Gongnang village just to take revenge and vent your anger. I didn't expect you to do such a big thing. We do want revenge. Chen Chen interrupted Ming Xuechang's chatter and then continued. Next, you better stop talking so much nonsense. Don't treat us as fools. We are responsible for everything that happened recently. We also have a name, the Dongfeng Corps. Do you understand? Now, can you cooperate? Ming Xuechang looked at Chen Chen in astonishment and asked in disbelief. Dongfeng Corps? You guys? The East Wind Corps? How is it possible that the Dongfeng Corps, which rose rapidly within half a year, participated in the power coup in Munka, and wiped out the Nongkong group overnight, was actually composed of a few miscellaneous soldiers who were once under his command? This is the biggest joke in the world. But the problem is, judging from Peng Diren's attitude towards them and the equipment they were wearing, the credibility of this matter is indeed frighteningly high. How did they do it? How did they go from knowing nothing to being able to do it in half a year? How could they not understand anything? They were the only 4 people who survived the battle. They almost wiped out a company of the Burmese mountain troops. The scene of these 4 people standing behind the corpses on the ground is still fresh in my memory. In other words, they had actually been lurking in the Allied forces for a long time, and I had no idea of their purpose. Confused thoughts kept flashing through Ming Xuechang's mind. He suddenly figured out a lot of things, but there were more things that were shrouded in a thick fog. However, this was not the main problem at the moment. The main problem is that if you fall into their hands, there is almost no chance of survival. The conditions that were originally prepared for mediation with Peng Diren have all lost their meaning. They are here for revenge, so what conditions can you negotiate with them? Unless they are willing to pay with their lives, how can they let it go? At this moment, Ming Xuechang deeply regretted the choice he had made. There are so many scapegoats. Why were they chosen? What exactly was your original idea? Yes, at that time I thought that since they could run away, they would definitely come back one day. And if I labeled them as criminals, my situation would be much safer. This is a cautious plan. But the problem is, it is this excessive caution that has put himself in the current desperate situation. What an irony. Bai Suoqing had advised himself. He had said more than once that he was being too cautious. But he simply couldn't listen and thought that the other party was just frivolous and arrogant. But in fact, that was a higher wisdom. Ming Xuechang sighed again, nodded slightly, and said, I understand. But you don't have to expect anything from me. My family is in Bai Suoqing's hands. You can't use them to threaten me. On the other hand, it is impossible for me to cooperate with you. Our relationship can only last until death. So, kill me, and your revenge will be achieved, and everything will be over. It's not that easy. Chen Chen shook his head and replied, I don't intend to use any fancy tricks on you. Deals, persuasion, threats, they are all meaningless. I just want to tell you that I'm also very good at interrogation. As long as there is enough time, I believe no one will not speak up. And now, just in time, there's plenty of time. This is your last chance. If you want to talk, I'll give you 10 minutes. If you don't want to tell me, then I can start now. Believe me, in order to have a comfortable death, you would even tell every detail about how many ants you burned to death when you were a child. Chen Chen looked at the various tools brought in by others. His eyes were completely indifferent, but revealed a heart-wrenching cruelty. Ming Xuechang couldn't help but shudder. He opened his mouth, hesitated for a few seconds, and finally said, "Then you can give it a try." The interrogation of Ming Xuechang lasted for 8 hours, during which Chen Chen used all the methods he was familiar with or unfamiliar with. During the process, Ming Xuechang collapsed several times, yelling hysterically and describing all the sufferings that the relatives of Li Bang and Shi Dakai had experienced, trying to completely enrage them, make them lose their minds, and give them a quick death. He said that Shi Dakai's parents were imprisoned together from beginning to end, and they witnessed the whole process of their closest relatives gradually dying. He said that Li Bang's father killed Li Bang's grandfather in front of his daughter and wife, and the old man only said, "Son, Dad is leaving first," before he died. He said that Li Bang's sister was not insulted only because his mother served several people at the same time, leaving everyone busy. "Your sister has learned a lot and can learn things just by watching." These were his exact words. These words made Shi Dakai and Li Bang furious. But what Ming Xuechang did not expect was that he was unable to bring any changes to the interrogation process at all. Because the person who carried out the interrogation was Chen Chen, and Chen Chen was not angry with him at all. Obviously, such provocation is meaningless. Chen Chen just treated all of this as a kind of boring but necessary job. And since it was a job, it required concentration, precision, and full commitment. It is indeed not easy. This is because most of the pain and fear during interrogation are related to the act of death itself. Only in this way can the psychological defenses of the person being interrogated be quickly broken. But what if the person being interrogated is already prepared to die? When the biggest threat is no longer a threat, the only thing left to exploit is pain itself. And Chen Chen completed the process of creating pain almost perfectly. He did not use the progressive technique commonly used in interrogations, but instead turned up the intensity from the beginning. He even used many immature methods to give Ming Xuechang an extremely novel and painful experience. Things like pulling out nails, using the tiger bench, and burning people are too low-level, too rough, and too inefficient. How can a truly professional modern torturer use such a technique? Most methods have evolved to use medical equipment, electronic equipment, and chemical drugs to directly act on nerves. Of course, Chen Chen did not have such advanced equipment, but even if it was just a low-end version, it was enough to open Ming Xuechang's eyes. But when Chen Chen carefully avoided the blood vessels and began to peel off Ming Xuechang's facial muscles, exposing his trigeminal nerve with a somewhat rough technique, he completely collapsed. After the trigger point was triggered, Ming Xuechang only lasted 30 seconds. He begged for mercy the first time, and after that, everything went smoothly. He answers whatever you ask. He had hesitated and regretted in the middle, but Chen Chen only used one sentence to make him completely give up resistance. "You know what? No one can bear the pain caused by high intracranial pressure. Do you want to give it a try?" As he finished speaking, he raised the thin, iron skewer in his hand. Everyone present felt a chill down their spine, because they knew that what Chen Chen was going to do was not to pierce Ming Xuechang's brain with an iron stick. This was truly too terrifying. Only someone with sufficient medical knowledge and a close familiarity with the human body could come up with this method of torture. Only those with extremely strong willpower and absolutely strong mentality can carry out these methods. How can Chen Chen be a mercenary? He's like an unlicensed surgeon. What's even more terrifying is that although his surgery was not performed well, he guaranteed one most basic requirement. That is, the person undergoing the surgery would not die. Even if it could be cured. No one can really withstand such torture. This is the common thought of everyone. So, after 8 hours of interrogation, Chen Chen got everything he wanted. He put down the sterilized iron needle in his hand and said to Shi Dakai, who was watching, "Go to Peng Diren and ask for number 4 for Ming Xuechang. Don't let him die yet. Maybe he can still be useful." Clear. Shi Dakai immediately turned around and left. At this time, the pent-up anger in his heart had already been completely vented. Even if it's not done by myself. The situation is clear. The Banglong smuggling route is indeed controlled by Ming Xuechang, but it has now been handed over to Bai Suocheng. Okay, now Bai Suocheng has one more reason to die. The only problem for us is how to do it. He probably doesn't know our true purpose yet. Otherwise, he would never hand Ming Xuechang over even if he was beaten to death. In fact, what Chen Chen said was not rigorous. Not to mention Bai Suocheng. Even he himself had not thought of attacking this route before receiving Xiaoyu's call. It would be strange if others could guess it. Who would have thought that behind the power struggle in the tiny place of Kokong, there would be so many twists and turns? The most they could think of were revenge killings, counterattacks by the Allied forces, and the like. Their vision was limited to Kokong and northern Myanmar. A dragon cannot be raised in shallow water, and a frog in a well cannot see the real sky. This is hateful and pathetic. Even the core members of the Dongfeng Corps could only share some not-so-detailed information under the influence of Chen Chen. Of course, this little bit of information is enough to distinguish them from others. After hearing Chen Chen's words, everyone nodded, and Shi Dakai asked, "So we still have to stay in Kokong and continue to deal with Bai Suocheng?" "Yes. I'm not sure how long it will take, but I estimate it will take at least 2 to 3 weeks. We have to go back to Mungka first and drive the Mingshi truck over. We also have to find a way to transfer the 2 F-150s over. It's not easy. The target is too big and too conspicuous. It will easily attract the attention of all parties. Maybe we need to create a bigger chaos to give ourselves a chance." At this point, Chen Chen let out a breath and changed the subject. "But that's all for later. Now we have another major problem. What to do with Ming Xuechang?" I mean, he's definitely going to die, but how is he going to die? That's a problem. Do you have any good ideas? Or do you want to continue to torture for a while? That's not necessary. Li Bang shook his head first, then said, if you continue doing this, it won't make me feel any better. Just kill him. I agree. The two expressed their opinions one after another, and Chen Chen nodded. People's psychology has thresholds. After all, there are only a few people who keep their enemies in captivity and torture them for decades. Most mentally normal people, after venting their anger, will choose to use relatively simple methods to complete the loop. That is, kill him and be done with it. This is not weakness, nor is it kindness, but a rational self-protection mechanism. Excessive brutality can alienate people, but fortunately, none of the people in the Dongfeng Corps showed such signs. So, after just a few simple words, Ming Xuechang's ending was determined. After confirming with Peng Diren, Li Bang walked up to Ming Xuechang with a gun. He looked at Ming Xuechang, who had regained consciousness, and said, do you know what Wei Rong's ending was? She died a miserable death, you know that. Bai Sawatching will not protect your daughter. She's 29, right? What good can a woman of this age expect? By the way, your granddaughter is 14 years old this year. You, what on earth are you going to do? Ming Xuechang's eyes were red with anger, but Li Bang just shook his head. We won't do anything. We are not evil people or jackals like you. I'm just telling you something that's bound to happen. Trust me, you'll be meeting them soon. Remember to walk slowly and wait for them. The gunshots rang out, and Ming Xuechang's last words were not uttered. Li Bang turned around and looked at Chen Chen and said, Brother Chen, it's done. It's not over yet. Chen Chen shook his head and continued. The next one should be Bai Sawatching's turn. After Ming Xuechang's death, Peng Diren released the prisoners of the border defense camp as planned. These people were driven out of Hongyan without any equipment on them, and even their better quality boots were stripped off. They will have to walk dozens of kilometers to Gongtang village to seek support, but no one cares whether they can get there or survive. The matter has come to an end for the time being. DUI Bai cannot rush into any action because he is different from Ming Xuechang. He is the real core figure in Kokang's military and political circles and the real spokesperson for the Myanmar side on the surface. Even if they wanted to kill him, they could never use the same method as they used to kill Wei Chaoren, because that would inevitably cause greater unrest and lead to completely uncontrollable consequences. To put it bluntly, if Wei Chaoren died, the Myanmar side could quickly find a new person to replace him. But what if Bai Sawatching died? Then there must be an explanation. That's why Xiaoyu said be careful on the phone. Her meaning was obvious. Bai Sawatching can die, but he must die after the conditions are ripe. Otherwise, once the truth comes out, no one will be able to help the Dongfeng Corps. Because this is a direct enemy of Myanmar. Their influence is definitely not limited to Kokang. It's troublesome, so you have to be careful. But anyway, it's not a critical matter. Even in the most intense conflicts and battles, there needs to be a breathing space. Now, the Dongfeng Corps must make good use of the window period when the Onting Order is brought to light. The situation in Kokang is undergoing a major adjustment, and various forces are redistributing interests, and when they have no time to take care of the Dongfeng Corps or the Allied forces and complete its preparations as quickly as possible. Only when everything is ready can you be confident enough to do something later. Anyway, let's go back to Mengka first. The weapon station provided by Peng Xuqing is about to arrive, and the Mengsure vehicle provided by Xiaoyu is also on the way. When the Dongfeng Corps returns to Mengka, it will basically be ready to receive it. By then, a Mengsure vehicle equipped with a brand new weapon station will increase the combat effectiveness of the Dongfeng Corps by several percent. At least if they wanted to divide the battlefield, they wouldn't have to rush in with an armed jeep without any protection. Thinking of this, Chen Chen decisively gave the order to evacuate. Peng Diren didn't feel any pain about their departure, because originally, this team never belonged to him. However, from his own perspective, he still hopes that the Dongfeng Corps can remain in Kokang. At the very least, he had to wait until he had completely taken the initiative before letting the Dongfeng Corps leave. The situation in Kokang is very chaotic right now, and the Myanmar army's movements are unpredictable. It's very risky for you to go through the Lashio area. If something goes wrong, it's likely that the entire team will be in trouble. It will be much more difficult to find a way to rescue them at that time. On the contrary, staying in Hongyan is a relatively safe choice for you. Also, just 2 hours ago, I released the information about Ong Tingling's location. Bai Sawatching has already arranged people to rescue him, and there will be results soon. After the dust settles with the changes in the power structure in Kokang, there are many things we can do, even, that's your own business. Chen Chen interrupted Peng Diren and continued. Ming Xuechang is dead, the main culprit has been executed, and Bai's problem is an indirect problem. Even if we want to solve it, it's not now. There is no reason for us to stay here any longer. This is not a rational choice. What if I can still make an offer? Peng Diren asked. It's impossible. Chen Chen shook his head firmly and refused. He understood Peng Diren's thoughts better than anyone else. He spoke nicely and acted as if he wanted to share the benefits. But in fact, the other side just wanted to use the Dongfeng Corps and the possible forces behind the Dongfeng Corps to help their allies fight back to Kokang. This cannot be said to be a sinister intention, but it can be said to be an ulterior motive. And Chen Chen would never be willing to be used by him. Even if he actually had no intention of leaving and was just going home to get some equipment, he couldn't let Peng Diren know. The true intention must never be revealed. Seeing Chen Chen's attitude, Peng Diren also realized that there was no point in keeping him. So the two sides said goodbye to each other in a friendly manner. The Dongfeng Corps immediately began to prepare and plan to leave Kokang according to the original plan of staggered support. Chen Chen made several phone calls. First, he transferred the two F-150s waiting in the Hukou area and ordered them to go to the suburbs of Gunong to provide support. Secondly, He called back to Mungka and arranged for Jackal to pick up the family members arriving from nearby Mingla. News of the fire at Henry's Hotel in Old Street had spread far and wide, and no doubt the Jackal had heard of it. But no matter how he asked, Chen Chen refused to admit that this matter had anything to do with him, so Jackal could only helplessly say, "Let's talk about it when you come back." Finally, Chen Chen confirmed the preparation status of the weapon station with Peng Shuqing, who told him that everything was in place and could be equipped directly as long as the Predator drove back. Hearing this, Chen Chen couldn't help but feel helpless. Where are the Predators? Now you have to be a warrior. Fortunately, although different models of armored vehicles and weapon stations are incompatible, the modification is not difficult. Theoretically, the Predator's weapon station can also be used by the Dongfang Mengshi. After making several calls in succession, Chen Chen did not call Xiaoyu. On the one hand, it was because he had always had a single-line contact with the other party, and he had no way at all. On the other hand, he felt that it was meaningless to ask about such things because everything would be arranged by the other side anyway. Everything was ready. The Dongfeng Corps had completed its preparations and got on the car to leave Kokong. Peng Diren stood by and saw him off in person with a sincere smile on his face. He was still grateful to Chen Chen. Although there was no further cooperation, the benefits he had gained were already enough. What else is there to be dissatisfied with? Without Chen Chen and the Dongfeng Corps, I'm afraid I would have died. Commander Chen, have a safe trip. Peng Diren waved his hand and said, "If you come to Kokong again, you can contact me first. I can find a way to arrange for you to go with me." No problem. Chen Chen nodded without hesitation. Although Peng Diren was in decline, he still had basic abilities. There was no reason for him to refuse such convenient conditions. The Jeep had already started. He released the handbrake and put his foot on the accelerator, but at this moment, an accident happened again. Chen Chen's cell phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. It is undoubtedly a small fish. At the same time, Peng Diren's adjutant was running towards this side at an astonishing speed. Chen Chen answered the phone, but only a very brief sentence came from the other end, and then the call was hung up immediately. Ong Tingling is dead. Bai Suaching is responsible. Leave Kokong immediately. Chen Chen suddenly raised his head and looked at Peng Diren, and his adjutant just happened to speak breathlessly. Commander Ong Tingling is dead. Nu Qin and Suo Minwu have joined forces. Suo Minwu is going to replace Ong Tingling. Bai Suaching has taken over the border defense camp. We are done. The Burmese army just announced a plan to eliminate bandits. Peng Diren was stunned. He looked at his adjutant and then at Chen Chen. Chen Chen took a deep breath and said, "It has nothing to do with me. Come on." Chen Chen is determined not to continue to get involved in the power struggle among several forces in Kokong, but this does not mean that he will give up his ultimate goal. On the contrary, it was precisely in order to better achieve the ultimate goal that he had to cut the Gordian knot and quickly extricate himself, break free from the constraints of these complex power struggles, look at the chaotic situation from a higher and broader perspective, and find the best breakthrough point. In a word, he was in the mountains before, but now he is coming out of the mountains. The armed jeep left Hongyan, made several large circles, bypassed the Burmese army's defense zone, and arrived at Hukou. After meeting up with the two F-150s, it continued along the planned route back to Mungka. The journey of nearly 500 kilometers took the team nearly 20 hours with many twists and turns. When Chen Chen saw the familiar buildings in Mungka City, his tense heart finally relaxed a little. He first went to the Dongfeng Corps' office to complete some work in daily operations. During the 2 weeks that he was away, the Dongfeng Corps continued to operate based on the rules that had been initially established, and even took on 2 security escort missions that were not difficult, earning nearly $6,000. Theoretically speaking, this amount of money is not small, because there are less than 10 people left, and each person gets 600 yuan, which is far more than the average income in northern Myanmar, and ordinary mercenary groups cannot even compare to it. However, when the finance department saw the $8.4 million transferred into the account one by one, and when he announced the specific shares to others according to the procedure, almost everyone was stunned, because they did nothing. But after deducting the operating costs and equipment losses from the $8.4 million, each of them still had about $4,000. How much is this? Nearly 30,000 renminbi. In the past, when Meng Yang was here, the entire mercenary group was busy all day long, living on the edge of a knife and having no time to rest, and they could only earn this much money in a month at most. Now, just lying down at home, the money comes by itself. The impact of the guaranteed salary shocked everyone. And in addition to the shock, everyone had a common idea, which was, this place is fine. You must participate in more tasks and improve your attendance rate. You must not get eliminated last. Their idea is very simple. Where in the whole northern Myanmar can you find a mercenary group with a fixed salary? Not to mention a fixed salary, there are not many groups that can pay normal pensions. And what about the Dongfeng Corps? All the previous death pensions have been paid out. The seriously injured Big Bird and Shorty have basically recovered. Big Bird's legs were disabled, so he received a disability pension and retired to the second line to temporarily take charge of simple task rating work. The follow-up plan is to get a good prosthetic limb to see if he can work part-time as an instructor for new recruits in the future. Of course, it would be difficult for him to make a lot of money again, but his life was already stable. What is a sense of security? This is called security. Therefore, after Chen Chen returned, driven by the sense of security deliberately created, the morale and organization of the entire Dongfeng Corps were visibly improved. Now, our team can be said to be quite united. This kind of unity is different from the one we had with Meng Yang before. It looks like they are buying people's hearts with money, but in fact, they are buying people's hearts with rules. Even if Wu Kaiching were still alive, he would never have thought that things could be done this way. How can anyone like rules? Aren't mercenaries supposed to have no rules? If the rules are so rigid, wouldn't everyone just run away? He has always thought so. I really hope he can live to see it. The white dog standing next to Chen Chen sighed, and Chen Chen shook his head and replied, if the rules are good rules, how can anyone not like them? Don't worry about it. We have important actions to follow. Time is very tight. Now that the money has arrived, we should replenish the equipment through various channels as soon as possible. The situation in Laojia is special. The probability of urban street fighting, trench warfare, and positional warfare is low. If there is a large-scale battle, it will mainly be concentrated in mobile warfare outside the city. Based on actual experience, the role of fuel-air explosive bombs is limited. We should reduce the procurement budget and instead purchase mortars and rocket launchers that can fire phosphorus aluminum incendiary bombs. The Type 8462mm chemical rocket launcher is a good choice. In addition, if there are suitable vehicles, we will also need to add a batch. Recoilless guns are very useful. Try to get as many as you can. Upgrade your bulletproof vests, night vision equipment, reconnaissance equipment, and communications equipment if possible. Go talk to the Jackal. It's okay if the price is a little higher. Finally, we need to find the 7th Brigade and Peng Shuqing to get the ammunition supplies from them. Clear. Bai Go nodded immediately, and Chen Chen silently estimated the total cost of the purchase. The current operating expenses of the entire Dongfeng Corps are close to $9 million, and the Mengshi vehicle does not require any money, so he has sufficient funds to mobilize. Even if all the above purchases are completed, the maximum amount spent would be around $1 million. There's really no place to spend the rest. It is impossible to add new staff. Now, including civilian staff, the overall size of the mercenary group has reached more than 30 people, which is at a balance point in management. If it expands blindly, it will not bring about an improvement in combat effectiveness, but a decline. Why do we need so many people? To fill the line? I don't know how to find Muguay to fill in the lines. Those people are so cheap. Okay. Outsourced employees who come and go at will are not easier to manage than regular employees. Buy new equipment? The key is that you have to be able to buy it. It seems that it is really time to get a helicopter and spend some big money. Chen Chen scratched his head, thinking about how to use the Banglong smuggling line as a bargaining chip to negotiate with Xiaoyu. And at this moment, Bai Go suddenly spoke. Captain, we are now quickly replenishing our equipment in order to return to Kokong. But I have a question. Do we really want to continue to get involved in the Kokong matter? What I mean is that Ming Xuechang is dead, his revenge has been taken, and his name has been cleared. Besides, we haven't received any new instructions. Wouldn't it be bad if we act too impulsively? Should we simplify it and just fight Banglong? Wow, you even learned the word adventurism. You've integrated thoroughly. Chen Chen shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry, and replied, so we are temporarily returning to Minka, right? You are right, blind activism is not advisable. But once something is started, it's hard to end it so easily. Bai Sawatching will find out sooner or later that one of our predators was blown up. There are only 2 of these in northern Myanmar. It would be easy to trace them back to us. Therefore, the conflict between us and him will soon be exposed. It is not the conflict between the Allied forces and the coup forces, but the conflict between the Dongfeng Corps and Bai Sawatching. With the death of Ong Tin Ling, the situation has become more complicated. The interests of the Myanmar military have been greatly affected. We don't know what they will think next. Now we have the 756th Brigade in Jingdong to attract fire. If the Burmese suddenly go crazy one day and think that our threat is greater than that of the 756th Brigade, so great that they can ignore the relationship of the 7th Brigade and attack us directly in Munka, then the situation will be very passive. So one of us, by Sawatching, and the coup army will die eventually. It's just a matter of time. Third, even if we take a step back, the smuggling route in Banglong is not as simple as you think. It is completely different from Bao Xiaomei's previous mission. You don't need to understand the details for now, just execute it. Understood, the white dog nodded thoughtfully and continued. So what we need to do now is to wait for the situation in Kokong to change, and then find an opportunity to catch them all in one fell swoop. Is this also part of your plan? Then I guess so. After receiving Chen Chen's affirmative answer, Bai Go's face showed an expression of understanding again, and he asked again, so when exactly do we start? It depends. We will definitely have to rest for a few days before going to Banglong. But after arriving in Banglong, we may not take action immediately. We still need to wait for the right time. Understood. Bai Go's confusion disappeared, and he said goodbye to Chen Chen with satisfaction and left the office. Chen Chen finished processing some financial approvals and suddenly felt like a boss. Maybe this will become the norm in the future? However, that will probably take time. After all, he was still the strongest combat force and the strongest frontline commander of the Dongfeng Corps. Before the others were fully trained, he would never retreat behind the scenes. Chen Chen sighed, stood up and prepared to leave the office, but just as he reached the door, he bumped into a friend he hadn't seen for a long time. Jackal. Shipwreck. What the hell did you do? As loud and noisy as always. Chen Chen pulled him into the office and closed the door. Before he could speak, Jackal continued. The whole of Kokong is in chaos. You burned down the Henry Hotel. You crushed the Wei family. You also killed Ong Tingling. By the way, where is Ming Xuechang? Is Ming Xuechang dead too? Oh my god, Shipwreck. What on earth are you doing there? Are you really just going to pick up your family? Even if you want revenge, you wouldn't fight like this, right? Shipwreck. Tell me, don't you have a little thing to do? Can't you do small, simple tasks like other normal mercenary groups? For example, being a bodyguard, escorting some goods, or something like that. Chen Chen didn't know how to answer for a moment. After a few seconds of silence, he corrected himself. First, we did simple tasks and earned a few $1,000s. Secondly, I didn't do the things you said. The Jackal rolled his eyes and asked, do you think I will believe it? Sunken, you have such a strong personal style. Really, the fire at Henry Hotel seems to me like your business card. So, how did you do it? Gasoline? White phosphorus? Black powder? Thermite? Thermite. You dismantled the thermite bomb? You brought thermite bomb with you? How could there be such a thing in Kokong? I rubbed it with my hands. But that's right, it's your style. The jackal sighed deeply and continued. I can't figure it out even if you smash my head. You can also use homemade thermite to set fire. I heard that the Allied forces were besieged in Hongyan, and more than 20 people captured an entire Burmese border defense battalion of 1,000 people. How did you do it? No, it's all rumors. Chen Chen retorted firmly. I also think it's a bit exaggerated. What is the real situation? The jackal breathed a sigh of relief. After all, in his opinion, if it was really the case that 20 or so people captured 1,000 people, then the man in front of him could no longer be called a genius. He was a pure monster. The real situation is that 100 people were beaten by 1,200 people until only 20 or so were left, and then more than 20 people captured more than 200 people. But don't you think this is more exaggerated? The jackal was completely speechless. If 20 prisoners captured 1,000 people, there might be some luck or a trick to win by surprise. Then what Chen Chen said was that after a head-on fight, the enemy was defeated. It sounds more reasonable, but anyone who has really been on the battlefield knows how terrifying it is. It's not that exaggerated. Anyway, let's eat first. I'll tell you the details slowly. Okay, I won't ask you for the textbook this time. I can't learn it anyway. The two men stood up and walked towards the door. But as soon as they reached the first floor, they met a new visitor. Ibupa and Peng Shuqing. They had obviously received the message, and judging by the look on Ibupa's face, the message they had received was probably quite detailed. Because his expression could no longer be described as friendly, it was purely respectful. Mr. Sinking Ship, congratulations on your triumph. Ibupa took 2 quick steps, stretched out his hand to Chen Chen, and said. Chen Chen shook his hand and denied calmly. It's not a triumph. We haven't found the real kidnapper yet. Ibupa was stunned. Kidnapper? Are you still using this as a cover? You have wiped out all 4 major families, and you are still a kidnapper? Of course, he also heard the hidden meaning behind Chen Chen's words, so he said, yes, but as long as you come back safely, it's good. I came to see you too. As long as you were safe, it's good. If everyone is safe, that's great. Ibupa's voice gradually lowered, and the implication was very obvious, which was, brother, give me a way to survive. Peng Shuqing, who was standing by, not only did not think there was something wrong with Ibupa's humble attitude, but he agreed with it. After all, in his opinion, when Chen Chen killed Chen Yimin, it was still opportunistic. But now, he killed Wei Chaoren's entire family in the gap between several major forces, which is really a bit scary. You must not let this kind of person stare at you. He subconsciously looked at Chen Chen's reaction, and Chen Chen also replied kindly. As long as everyone works hard, everything will be safe and sound. Understood, of course. Ibupa quickly replied. Chen Chen nodded slightly, turned to Peng Shuqing and asked, Boss Peng, are the weapon stations here? Peng Shuqing nodded quickly and replied, we're here. In addition to the weapon station, the vehicle has also arrived. Car? You have the car too. Peng Shuqing smiled awkwardly and replied, no, it's not my turn to interfere with the car's affairs. I just saw the car parked in front of your house and mentioned it in passing. At my doorstep? How did you get it here? Well, it's hard for me to explain clearly. You'll know when you go and see it. We won't accompany you. Chen Chen had thought about this question many times. He was very curious about what reason they had to send the Mengsher to him in advance at this point in 2010, when Mengsher had not yet started large-scale exports. After all, exporting equipment is not a big problem, and selling Mengsher vehicles to northern Myanmar is not a problem at all. This thing was originally made to be sold. But if the orders from several customers in Hoa State, Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia have not been concluded yet, and your Dongfeng Corps gets the cars first, it would be difficult to explain. You have stronger purchasing power than them. Are you more valuable than them in cooperation? Doubts are bound to arise, and once they arise, they will come true sooner or later. There must be a reason that is acceptable and can save face. But what is the reason? The so-called growing out of the ground is definitely impossible. We are not fools. If you insist on denying something that you can see at a glance, then there is not much point. As for testing, scrapping, displaying, it doesn't seem that convincing. This made him feel for a time that even if the Mengsher vehicle was delivered, it might still bring a lot of extra trouble. But he never expected that this thing would be handed over to him in this way. These people directly arranged for Polytechnology to set up a representative office in Mengla, and then registered the Mengsher car under the name of the representative office and carried out a unique user experience activity. In this way, the problem of direct export by Dongfeng Group's Special Equipment Department no longer exists. With Polytechnology as an agent, things become a purely commercial activity. Even if someone thinks that this equipment was exported too early or given too high a priority, it can be easily explained by the reason of market expansion strategy of commercial companies. Good plan, good idea. The last time Chen Chen heard of using this method to solve a problem was in his previous life. At that time, Poly also carried out a similar operation in the Fashiram-Kadada Highway project in Sudan. Because the local security force was too weak, Polytechnology directly purchased 100 Mengsher vehicles for export. In fact, many of these 100 Mengsher vehicles were allocated to various representative offices in the form of rental, and finally sold to local forces in the form of financial leasing. This is a very strange method in the entire history of world arms trade. It solves a very core problem in arms trade, that is, the problem of attitude expression. Military equipment is different from other commodities. In many cases, no matter whether you are really pursuing profits or not, as long as the goods arrive, they will definitely be regarded as a statement of attitude. But what if it is done like Poly? I didn't say I was selling them. I use these things for security purposes in my company. What? How did it end up in someone else's hands? Are you kidding me? I'm a businessman. The current situation is sensitive, and it is inconvenient to sell. Can't my potential customers even try it? Don't blame me. You Americans banned sales to Sudan, but you didn't export T-72 to Sudan? You said it was sold to Egypt. What did we say? Therefore, in summary, such a plan ensures formal compliance at the most basic level and also leaves room for everyone to maneuver. Similarly, the safety of the equipment is also guaranteed. At a time when the Dongfeng Corps cannot be fully trusted, this can be said to be the most reasonable and safest option. Looking at the warrior parked in the yard, Chen Chen couldn't help but sigh. Really, when it comes to playing tricks, I really can't beat Xiaoyu and his gang. But no matter what, the things were delivered in the end. He walked forward, reached out, and touched this old comrade in arms whom he was once very familiar with, and a strange emotion arose in his heart. It is so familiar that I even remember the parameters of this protective version of the car clearly. The EQ 2050 Mengsher 1.5 generation hardtop model uses a 145 kilowatts V8 electronically controlled supercharged diesel engine and a 4-speed hydraulic automatic transmission. The acceleration time from 0 to 80 kilometers is 18 seconds. The maximum speed is 125 kilometers per hour, and the cruising range exceeds 600 kilometers. Large diameter, wide section, tubeless radial tires, and central inflation and deflation system, with continuously adjustable tire pressure, can easily cope with various accidents. With a minimum ground clearance of 410 millimeters, a maximum driving side slope of 40%, and a minimum turning diameter of 15 meters, it can quickly pass through a variety of complex terrains. The most important thing is the protective performance of this car. Within a distance of 100 meters, the windshield and body sides can resist 7.62 millimeters rifle fire, and the body armor can withstand 7.62 millimeters armor-piercing bullets. The V-shaped armor design at the bottom greatly enhances its ability to resist landmines. When fully equipped, this vehicle can even be equipped with additional reactive armor, so rockets will not cause structural damage to it. In general, this thing may not be as good as the Predator in terms of protection against explosives, but in terms of comprehensive capabilities, it has already surpassed the Predator in all aspects. It is worthy of being a product that competes with Hummer and is also a product that has been swept by new technologies. It is really amazing. Of course, there is more to it than that, because the car that Xiaoyu sent overcame with a periscope mechanical remote-controlled weapon station and even weapons. Compared to the Predator's OTR weapon station, the mechanical remote-controlled weapon station is not as technologically advanced, but it has the advantage of being stable, which is enough to deal with the war situation in northern Myanmar. The Type 04 35mm automatic grenade launcher that comes with this weapon station is a surprise among surprises. This is really thoughtful. Chen Chen couldn't help but sigh. Everyone gathered around, and at this moment, even Shirdukai, who was the calmest, couldn't help but reveal a strange look in his eyes. This is not a smuggled Paramount Raider. This is a genuine standard equipment. In the whole northern Myanmar, or even in the whole Southeast Asia, how many forces can use such standard equipment? Apart from those national-level forces, there are only Wa State and the Dongfeng Corps. Damn, are we actually beginning to enjoy the same treatment as Wa State in this regard? No, of course not that exaggerated. This is essentially just a transaction. But that's enough. He looked at the quietly parked warrior, then looked at Chen Chen beside him, and then said, "Captain, this car can't be abandoned casually in the future. That may not be the case." Chen Chen withdrew his hand from the angular front cover and answered, "Equipment is just equipment after all. It is not as valuable as a well-trained warrior anyway. What's more, we will have a lot of equipment like this in the future." After accepting the new Mengsher vehicles, the Dongfeng Corps' first purpose of returning to Munka was accomplished. Just 2 hours later, with the return of the reception team sent by the Jackal, the family members who entered from near Bada Brown also arrived in Munka. Needless to say, the joy and emotion of the family reunion were overwhelming. After seeing the great business created by the Dongfeng Corps, the surviving family members all shed tears. Even Bao Chi's father, who was always strong-willed, had tears in his eyes. For several months, they were tortured by anxiety and despair and became extremely thin, but somehow they managed to survive, although some of them are no longer with us. But those who survive must live well in the end. The sad atmosphere did not last too long. According to Chen Chen's arrangement, all family members temporarily lived in the villa and would move out after the subsequent situation stabilized further and everyone purchased a property. Bao Chi and Li helped to settle their families, while Shirdukai and Chen Chen, who had nothing to do, went to Munka City to help them buy daily necessities. Of course, this matter could be done by others, but Chen Chen's consideration was simple. That is, to take Shirdukai out for a walk so that he would not be stimulated by the scene of family reunion. However, judging from Shirdukai's reaction, Chen Chen was indeed worrying too much. The latter always appeared calm and indifferent. He took Chen Chen through the streets and bought everything he needed. He was even thoughtful enough to remember to buy some girls' items for Li Bang's sister Li Zhu. When talking about the issue of family placement, his emotions did not fluctuate much, and he remained quite rational. We will definitely have to move out in the future. After all, the space in the villa is limited. If there are more and more people, living there will become crowded. Besides, our pace can't always be as fast as it is now. The situation has gradually opened up, and the reputation of the Dongfeng Corps is also rising. There will come a day when we no longer need to rely entirely on the guns in our hands to exchange for a sense of security, but can exchange it with our names. This will definitely change our lives. Entertainment, leisure, marriage, and having children are all long-term plans that need to be considered. It's impossible to get married and live with a bunch of men, right? You still have to have your own business. I think we should just create a real green zone and build some houses ourselves. Chen Chen was carrying large and small bags of daily necessities in his hands. After hearing Sherdakai's words, he couldn't help but nodded. This is a good plan, but it certainly cannot be arranged uniformly. It depends on personal wishes. We can't force a compound in Myanmar. After all, we are mercenaries, not. Chen Chen didn't finish his words, but changed the subject and asked, "What about you? What are your plans? I mean, are you still going to continue with me?" Sherdakai was silent for a few seconds, then replied, "To be honest, when I knew my parents were gone, I had already thought about quitting. The motivation that keeps me going is revenge. But later, Wei Chaoran's family was killed, Ming Xuechong also died, and I felt that my revenge was complete. At this time, I didn't want to quit anymore. I think I should continue doing this, not for any particular goal, but simply because I feel that this is a much more correct thing to do than anything else I've done." "A lot correct?" Chen Chen repeated it subconsciously, his tone somewhat doubtful. "That's right. Captain, do you remember that I mentioned before that I wanted to open a Myanmar? At that time, I thought that being able to run a small business here and earn enough money to survive was actually pretty good. But now that I think about it, this idea was quite naive. Don't even think about whether my supermarket can continue to operate. Even if it does, what's the point? People who are supposed to die will still die. I can only watch but can't do anything. That feeling would probably be very painful. Just like my parents, if I really opened a Myanmar, I would be helpless even if they died, let alone revenge. And now I have to say, I felt relieved when you tortured Ming Xuechong." Having said that, Dakai breathed a sigh of relief. After a pause, he continued, "I don't actually want to save the lives of those who shouldn't die. That's too idealistic. I just want to make sure that all those who should die die. It takes a lot of money, a lot of guns, a lot of connections and influence. To do this, I can only continue along the path we are on now with you. You've said before that no one will be a mercenary for life, right? I don't think you mean to ask me to retire and open a supermarket." Chen Chen nodded slowly, neither admitting nor denying. However, his attitude was actually enough to make sure Dakai understand everything. He is not a stupid man. The two walked towards the villa. The broom that Chen Chen had tucked under his armpit fell to the ground. Dakai bent down to pick it up and suddenly said with a smile, "I find that we are really special as mercenaries. Other mercenaries retire when they make enough money, but we have already made a lot of money, but we can't seem to stop. Captain, do you remember when we attacked Pwai Trading Company last time? At that time, you told Jackal that we were doing a big cleanup. Looking back now, we really were doing a big cleanup, but the broom we used was a little hard. It's good to be hard," Chen Chen slowly replied. He could clearly feel the changes in Dakai. If before it was extreme pessimism that pushed him forward, then now, beyond the core of pessimism, he had also begun to have some initiative changes. Such changes cannot be simply defined as good or bad, but as far as the change itself is concerned, it is positive anyway. Mercenaries who work only for money won't live long. The most basic situation is that the replacement of mercenaries is actually cyclical. Most mercenaries will temporarily withdraw after completing a few missions and getting enough rewards, and then come back again when the money is spent. Their skills will become rusty, their combat awareness will fade, and after 1 or 2 cycles of repeated alternation, they will die on the battlefield. And this is just one form of mercenary death. They will die quickly in many other forms. There is no difference physically or mentally. Only special mercenaries like Dakai have a real chance of making it to the end, because he began to have an anchor in his heart, and this anchor point will support him to continue fighting. He will not withdraw completely until what this anchor represents is realized or the anchor chain breaks completely one day. And at that time, generally speaking, his ending would not be too bad. Therefore, Chen Chen was very pleased with Dakai's changes. This was his true enlightenment. He understood the true core of a mercenary. Money is of course important, but the essence of mercenaries is power. Power created by force. If I don't have this power and I just want to expand the scale and make more profits with the same amount of money, why don't I open a global chain supermarket? This idea flashed through Chen Chen's mind, but then Dakai said something that surprised him. He said, "Captain, I think we should still open a supermarket." "Why? Are you still obsessed with selling durian or something like that?" Chen Chen asked doubtfully. "No, we don't sell durian, fruits, or small commodities. We sell brooms." After returning to the villa, Chen Chen prepared a family dinner for everyone as usual. However, because it was rare for all the members of the Dongfeng Corps to gather together, this family dinner eventually turned into a dinner party. Cooking for 40 people was too much trouble. Chen Chen was very enthusiastic at first, but he collapsed halfway through. In the end, he simply ordered takeout and brought it back, and symbolically fried a few dishes himself as a way of showing his attitude. However, even if it was just this, it was enough to open the eyes of those peripheral members of the Dongfeng Corps. They didn't bow down to him, but they did feel that this commander was a little different. Such differences would not be the reason for their complete loyalty, but subconsciously, a little more weight had been added to the scale that they were always wavering on. Who knows if at some point, this tiny weight will become the last chip to change their choice. Chen Chen didn't think so much about it. In fact, he was just doing things in the way he was used to in his previous life. The squad leader washes feet, the instructor cooks noodles, and the commander stands guard on New Year's Eve. It seems to be formalism, but when this form is solidified without change for decades, the core of a team will be quietly formed. Of course, Chen Chen didn't see that far. He only considered what was in front of him. Taking advantage of the dinner party, Chen Chen also set new rules for everyone. That is, from now on, drugs are not allowed in the Dongfeng Corps. Once discovered, they will be immediately expelled from the regiment and never used again. At the same time, the Dongfeng Corps has set up a special bonus. Those who voluntarily undergo monthly testing and are proven to be drug-free will receive a nutritional allowance of $500 each. Everyone agreed to this plan. They were not real drug dogs, but they needed to use drugs to maintain their fighting power. Now, with the improvement of tactical level, combat skills, and equipment level, such extreme situations will become less and less common. And there will be less and less need to rely on additional drugs to quench thirst. In that case, just quit. Anyway, what they used before were ecstasy and the like, and the difficulty of quitting is relatively much lower than that of number 4. After completing this task, the Dongfeng Corps has taken the first step towards regularization. Chen Chen is not so confident about the effect, but no matter what, it is a good start. The dinner lasted until 10 o'clock in the evening. After everyone had eaten and drunk their fill, Chen Chen took them into the combat command room and began to deploy subsequent combat tasks. Their identities have been revealed, their families are safe, and there are no worries, so they can mobilize on a large scale while maintaining basic security. The main purpose of this operation is to hit the arms smuggling route located in Banglong, but the enemy is unknown, the location is unknown, and the time of the operation is unknown. We will first go to Hukou, set up a temporary camp in Hukou, and conduct preliminary manual reconnaissance. We will still use the Ming Yang Huame Trading Company kidnapping case as a cover, and all actions must be consistent with the logic of this mission. This operation was conducted in a 4-man team formation, with a total of 6 teams dispatched. The specific grouping situation will be explained in the subsequent mission briefing. Please note that this mission is a level 1 mission. Considering the possibility of direct retaliation from the enemy against Minka, the personnel who stay behind will also be counted as having completed the mission, but the weighted commission share will be reduced to 20% of the direct action group. If a battle occurs later, real-time adjustments will be made. The mission is difficult and risky. Everyone can choose to act or stay. Now, raise your hands if you choose to act. As soon as Chen Chen finished speaking, almost everyone in the command room raised their hands at the same time. The only exception was the second bootlicker Sang Yi. He had been a little too eager to improve before and practiced frantically according to the training course provided by Chen Chen and successfully gave himself rhabdomyolysis. Although the symptoms were not too serious, he had to rest. At this moment, his face was full of bitterness, which made Chen Chen want to laugh. Sang Yi, stay here. You should have a good rest and study theory first. Don't practice blindly. We also follow the rules in Devil Week and Devil Month. How can we just do it recklessly? Understood, Captain. Sang Yi answered somewhat dejectedly. Chen Chen ignored him and looked at Bai Go, asking him to select 3 people to stay behind again. Then it's settled. We will also implement a rotation system for future operations. No one will be left without making money. Don't worry. Clear. Everyone answered at the same time, and then most people left, while the core group stayed to continue discussing more macro plans. Although the current situation is relatively complicated, it is still clear after all. In Kokong, with the death of Ong Tingling, the entire power structure has undergone a huge change. Suppressing bandits is just a pretext. Essentially, what Bai Sawaching needs to do is to use this opportunity to divert conflicts, clear his name, and then unite with Myanmar to try to lead all parties and dominate alone. For us, this is a good opportunity. They fight to the death, and we are the ones who benefit. If we can destroy the Banglong route in one fell swoop, then Bai Sawaching will have an arm cut off. In addition, after the Banglong route is destroyed, we can harvest more than just physical spoils. The intelligence value is also very high, enough to support us in carrying out more possible subsequent actions and taking all the benefits and opportunities of Kokong into our pockets. On the other hand, in southern Shan State and Tachalike, the news of the Thai King's death is confusing. After this period of fermentation, all forces have been involved, and the 505th Brigade has begun to show a clear tendency to split. It is almost only a matter of time before they unite with the Famong Battalion, and the Burmese and Thai officials are likely to reach a consensus on this issue. That is to say, the pressure faced by the 756th Brigade will be quite great. They can withstand it for a while, but not forever. We may have to intervene in the conflict between the 756th Brigade and the 505th Brigade later. On the one hand, passively speaking, revenge and silencing of us are inevitable. On the other hand, actively speaking, what we want is chaos, not to let Myanmar, Thailand, and the 505th Brigade fight each other like a united front. Of course, this conclusion depends on the final outcome of the Thai King's struggle. If the military loses and the Famong camp loses power, then we won't have this worry. But no matter what, we have to be prepared. Therefore, the issues in Banglung and Kokong must be resolved quickly. We must cut the Gordian knot. After hearing Chen Chen's analysis, everyone nodded in agreement. After a brief thought, Shi Dakai said, the Shan State issue is actually urgent, but not critical. In the early stages of our work, we have successfully laid out 2 lines of defense. That is the 756th Brigade, the 7th Brigade. They stand in front of us and will become a buffer zone for direct conflict between us and the Myanmar side. At least we will be relatively safe before the situation continues to deteriorate fundamentally. The real crisis mainly comes from Kokong because our identities are likely to be exposed in the short term. Even if Peng Diren wants to take the blame, he is unlikely to be able to do so. The Henry Hotel incident is too big. After dealing with Peng Diren, Bai Sawaching will definitely come on behalf of the Burmese side to ask for an explanation. This will be very troublesome for us. So, our course of action is actually very clear. That's right. Chen Chen nodded slightly, and the others also understood. Then what we have to do next is to prepare and set off as soon as possible. Shi Dakai showed a happy smile on his face, and he continued with a little emotion. We are too afraid of trouble. 2 days later, the Dongfeng Corps completed its rest, equipment replenishment, and adaptive training. 6 teams of 24 people set out at the same time, heading towards Hoko. At this time, Bai Sawaching's anti-bandit operation was in full swing. and he was concentrating on solving his own troubles. But what he didn't know was that in a hidden corner, someone had already looked ahead and planned to solve his problem. The Dongfeng Corps was fully equipped this time. In addition to the iconic individual fuel air explosive bomb, it also got 4 Type 84 rocket launchers and 8 Pyrogyl incendiary bombs. This number does not sound too much, but in fact, FHA 84 has been extremely low-key in the entire history of individual equipment development. In the early stage, it was only issued to special forces, and in the later stage, it was only issued to engineers. In the meantime, it was only equipped on a small scale in regular troops for less than 5 years. The reason for this situation is mainly because the positioning of this thing is relatively sensitive. It is used to replace flamethrowers to attack targets inside buildings. In order to achieve better burning effect, this rocket launcher uses special pyrogyl fuel, which is metal powder reinforced napalm, which is a rather inhumane weapon. Even the so-called smoke bombs it fired were actually filled with white phosphorus and were just incendiary bombs in a different skin. Therefore, in order to avoid being caught by certain international organizations, this weapon has always been presented as an incinerating chemical defense rocket. Both its equipment and export have been extremely restrained, and only a few are left in the open. Later, individual soldier fuel air explosive bombs replaced the role of this thing, and its actual combat value became even smaller. Therefore, it is extremely difficult to get it in northern Myanmar. In fact, Chen Chen certainly didn't want this thing to attack the building. They had the PF-89 fuel air bomb for attacking the building. What he really values is the powerful visual effect and psychological deterrence that this type of weapon can create. Think about it. Why do many explosions in Hollywood movies use deflagration instead? It's because this thing has a strong visual effect and creates a strong sense of impact. The same is true on the battlefield. The lower soldiers who have not received systematic training are more likely to collapse in big situations. Once their morale is broken, the battle will quickly become one-sided. This is a trick to take advantage of the situation, and it can be regarded as a straw on the battlefield where every penny counts. It is not certain how useful it will be, but it will definitely be useful. In addition to the incendiary rocket launchers, the Mk-19S carried by the two F-150S, plus the Type 04-35mm automatic grenades on the Mengsher vehicles, and 207 rocket launchers mounted on the back seats of pickup trucks, the firepower coverage capability of the entire Dongfeng Corps can be said to have reached the limit under limited conditions. If you encounter a large-scale, organized enemy, just a strike with a certain amount of ammunition is enough to completely tear apart the enemy's formation. Not to mention, this team of 6 vehicles was equipped with 3 heavy machine guns. Although they have only 24 people, the intensity of their firepower has undoubtedly reached the level of a company-level unit. And it is a company-level unit in the north, not a chicken-and-egg infantry company like the one in northern Myanmar that can't even provide a few light machine guns. Of course, the most important thing is that these weapons may seem complicated, but in fact they are the result of Chen Chen's careful consideration and meticulous selection. They all have one thing in common, that is, they're simple to operate and easy to use. Needless to say, the 107mm firepower, after adjusting the shooting parameters, just fire without thinking. If it is direct shooting, you don't even need a launch tube. Among the 3 automatic howitzers, except for the periscope weapon station on the Mengsher, which is a little more difficult to use, the other 2 are covering firepower that can hit anyone they see, so there is not much accuracy problem. As for heavy machine guns and rocket launchers, they can't beat a real professional machine gunner, but they will always pull the trigger at people, right? Whether they can hit or not is another matter, but you can always fool a few people. And in this land, this is enough. But of course, such firepower configuration is not without any disadvantages. Their convoy was so conspicuous that even if they went to a city like Banglong, which was quite far away from the garrisons of the Myanmar army and the ethnic armed groups, they would inevitably attract the attention of the local police and security brigade. Therefore, they had to choose to camp in Huko, a small village with a population of no more than 100 people. Vehicles were not allowed to enter the village, so they could only set up a temporary camp on the outskirts. This was a considerable test for the discipline of the Dongfeng Corps, but fortunately, after this period of training and assimilation, all members had basically established a sense of obedience to the commander. Even though some people complained about the poor conditions, no one questioned Chen Chen's decision from beginning to end. Standing on the outskirts of the temporarily cleared forest space, Chen Chen once again checked the surrounding environment and the layout of the guard posts. After making sure that there were no omissions, he finally returned to the center of the camp with peace of mind and continued to set up camp with others. Simple tents for rest were set up, and Chen Chen used an engineer's shovel to dig out a smokeless stove to separate the fire area from the living area, and arranged for several people to dig a temporary toilet far away from the living area. Don't think these are small details, but in a sense, whether the camp management is done well or not can completely distinguish between mediocre and talented people. The time when the Dongfeng Corps will be stationed in Huko is not yet determined, and the time when this camp will be used is also not yet determined. Therefore, according to the most basic hypothetical principle, it must be designed in the most reasonable, comfortable, and functional direction. Seeing how Chen Chen skillfully arranged the camp, Ga Yaozi, who had been helping him, was also quite touched. The Lion Corps also had experience in setting up camp and garrisoning in the wild, but compared to Chen Chen, their camp management was too rough. He even remembered a few times when there were no drainage ditches for the tents in the camp, and after a heavy rain, everyone's sleeping bags were wet, causing a lot of complaints. And what about Chen Chen? Not only did he dig drainage ditches, he also specially adjusted the traffic routes of the camp so that the drainage ditches bypassed the main action area to prevent it from affecting personnel activities in an emergency. This alone made the white dog feel suddenly enlightened. In wars and battles, victory or defeat is never just decided on the battlefield. Details like this can tip the scales. As the camp was finally completed, the mercenaries who had originally complained all shut up, at least in their opinion. Although this camp could not be called luxurious, it could definitely be described as comfortable. Everything was ready, and Chen Chen arranged for the subsequent food and water acquisition. Yang Shu, who had stayed and waited in Hyuko for a while, went to the village to buy the supplies the team needed. So that night, all members of the Dongfeng Core Action Team had a simple but hot meal. This marked the official entry of the camp in a normal operation. After the cooking team entered, the camp was basically established. Therefore, Chen Chen did not waste any more time. After leaving by Go, Bao Qi and Lin He to hold the fort, he took 3 people including Yang Shu and rushed to Banglong along a small road to prepare for preliminary manual reconnaissance. Due to the tense situation, the 4 men were unable to carry exaggerated weapons and equipment. The submachine guns that were previously seized and easy to hide finally came in handy. With 2 UZIs, 1 MP5K, and a CS/LS2 with the silencer removed, the 4 men had basic firepower support. They walked the nearly 15-kilometer trail for 2 hours and entered the city of Banglong around 8 o'clock in the evening. At this time, the city of Banglong was still prosperous and bustling. Looking at the people coming and going on the street, Shidakai frowned and said, "This place is very unusual. Although it's not small, it's actually just a small town of less than 2 square kilometers. Where do all these people come from?" Hearing his words, Yang Shu nodded slightly and continued, "It's not just a matter of too many people. The business here is a bit too prosperous. Look at this Latin American restaurant on the roadside. What the hell can a restaurant like this survive? It's for certain people." Chen Chen replied calmly, "This place is actually very similar to Munka. Both are prosperous settlements formed due to freight transit. However, it is very different from Munka in that it is not just the local mercenaries in northern Myanmar who are active here. Big Kai, do you remember that we mentioned before that there is a shadow corps in Jingdong? They also have a branch here. The number of people is not large, but it can represent something. This is the city with the most foreign mercenaries besides Dakali. And the reason they gather here is because of the arms here. So, where do the weapons here come from?" Sure Dakai continued to ask. "From many sources. Some came from the ethnic armed groups in Kokong and Hua State, some came from the Myanmar army, some came from the arsenals in Dangyang and Mengma, and a considerable number even came from Bamo." "Bamo? In Kachin?" "That's right." Chen Chen nodded slightly, and Sure Dakai breathed a sigh of relief. No wonder. This sentence, "no wonder," contains a lot of things, but Li Bang was too lazy to listen, and Yang Shu didn't understand it at all. "Anyway, let's find a place to stay first. Yang Shu, you've been to Banglong before when you were waiting for help. Are you familiar with the situation?" "Yes. We are staying at the Golden Lantern Hotel, which is a fairly large hotel with a large flow of people and loose management, which makes it easy for us to hide." "What about the geographical location?" "In the central area, there are 2 main roads passing by. Behind the hotel is a small road, less than 600 meters away from the woods west of Banlong, so evacuation is very convenient." "That's fine." Chen Chen breathed a sigh of relief. Yang Shu originally planned to use Banglong as the rendezvous point, so the preliminary reconnaissance was done very well. Such a hotel can not only serve as a temporary stay, but is also relatively convenient for intelligence gathering, which fully meets Chen Chen's requirements. So, with Yang Shu leading the way, the 4 of them checked into the Golden Lamp Hotel using the forged identity documents provided by the 7th Brigade. After checking the surrounding environment, the 4 of them settled down temporarily. Chen Chen did not start the investigation immediately. Instead, he took out his phone and dialed a number that was delivered at the same time as the Mengsher vehicle. Xiaoyu's contact number. It was already 9 o'clock, but the phone only rang twice before it was connected. Xiaoyu on the other end of the phone seemed not surprised at all by the call. She even guessed the purpose of Chen Chen's call. "Sunken, are you ready to start the operation?" Xiaoyu asked. "Yes, we are in Banglong now and plan to start the operation after completing the collection of human intelligence. But I need intelligence sharing. How much information do you have? Can it directly support the operation?" "Cannot." Xiaoyu answered immediately and then explained. "We have some understanding of the situation in Banglong, but because it is too difficult to infiltrate, we are basically on the surface. What we can confirm now is that the smuggling route in Banglong mainly originates from 2 businesses. The first one is the Leophagia Commercial Bank, which was previously controlled by Ming Xuechong. It is located to the east of the Banglong Village Clinic. It is a courtyard-style building with an area of about 4,000 square meters and 4 buildings with less than 5 floors. The second one is the Bangningswang Pagoda Trading Company, which is mainly controlled by the Kachin side, but the specific controller is unknown. The Bangningswang Pagoda Business House is located outside the city on the northeast side of Banglong, on the north side of the main road. It is a small manor with an area of about 100 acres. The core area is a series of low-rise buildings, a total of 16 buildings. We don't know the armed situation of these 2 companies, but what is certain is that the number of armed personnel in each company is at least over 100, and they are all well-equipped. The 2 companies are not in competition. Bangningswang Company is mainly responsible for the distribution of goods, while Leophagia Company is mainly responsible for on-site distribution. To put it simply, Bunnings is a wholesaler and Lao Phagia is a retailer. These 2 trading companies and their trade routes basically constitute the core of Banglong's smuggling route. Previously, under the control of Ming Xuechong, this core was once very stable. But now that Ming Xuechong is dead, it gives us a chance. The window period during the power transfer process is the most suitable time to take action. If we want to crack down on the smuggling routes, it would be a good idea to directly eliminate the 2 businesses." Hearing Xiaoyu's words, Chen Chen nodded slightly but then shook his head and said, "It is not enough to completely solve the smuggling problem in Banglong by just taking down 2 companies. These 2 companies are essentially just agents. One represents Kachin, and the other represents Kokon. Even if we take them down, they can form new agents and reactivate the well-established smuggling routes here. Don't you have any solutions for reference? Or is there a breakthrough that can solve the problem once and for all? Really not. Xiaoyu on the other end of the phone side and explained, if there was, Bonglong's problem wouldn't have been delayed until now. If we want to completely eradicate them, the power behind them is the real key. I believe you understand this and have your own plans, so I don't need to say more. Clear. Chen silently nodded, but he did not finish his words. Instead, he continued to ask, so what is the standard for mission completion? As soon as the words came out, Xiaoyu fell silent. Obviously, this was not something she could decide quickly. After waiting for half a minute, Xiaoyu's voice sounded again. The Mengsher car is our down payment. What we are discussing now is the balance. If we only destroy the trading company and fail to re-establish the smuggling route in the short term, we will pay an additional $1 million in cash. If we can find a way to eliminate the conditions that lead to the formation of smuggling routes and curb their development in the long term, we can continue to provide upgrades for your equipment. You know, there is still a lot of room for upgrading the warriors. In the end, if you can completely solve the conditions under which this problem occurs, your helicopter, there will be one. Very nice. But it seems that it is still not enough. Solve the problem completely with only one helicopter? So Chen Chen said, you know, to completely solve the problem, Bai Sawaching must die first. Secondly, we also need to cut off the smuggling route from Bamo to Banglong. It's very difficult, and the workload is huge. I mean, if we really do this, our helicopters will have to be equipped with rocket launchers.